Morning to you, 6 o'clock on the dot, Wednesday, 24th of January. Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster here on GB News.
You are very welcome. Here's what's leading the news this morning. There's pressure on the Prime Minister. He's facing calls to resign following a scathing attack from former Cabinet Minister Simon Clarke.
Donald Trump won in New Hampshire overnight, beating rival Nikki Haley. Is a Trump v Biden rematch now inevitable?
And Storm Jocelyn will continue to cause chaos with your commute this morning after another night of strong winds and heavy rains. Alex Deacon will have your forecast throughout the programme.
Very windy again out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn will clear away through the day today and the winds will slowly be easing. Bright and blustery with sunshine and a few showers. A full forecast coming up later.
Hollywood's Night of Nights and now nominations have been announced for the Academy Awards. Summer blockbusters Oppenheimer and Barbie lead the charge. We'll be looking at the snubs and the surprises.
And Paul Coit will be here with all your sport.
You deserve an award. You deserve an award.
Do you think so?
Yeah, every day.
The best Ken out there.
I'd like to say thank you very much to my mother and world peace and all those sorts of things. Chelsea gave Middlesbrough a bit of a hiding yesterday in the Carabao Cup. We'll talk about that. England will be playing India tomorrow. That is going to be very tough in India, and we'll talk huge trophies again.
Oh, huge trophies like
yeah.
the Dubai Open.
That's it. I've got more trophies, but great big trophies, huge trophies.
Yeah, they couldn't be bigger than the Dubai one.
Oh,
Really?
oh, you wait.
Where do you put them?
Well, I don't know. I don't know where you do them. I've never won a trophy in my life.
Yes.
Not even a weeny little trophy. I've not won anything.
What have you won, not won? What would you like to win? Let us know this
Anything.
morning.
Anything.
GBnews at gbnews.com.
So, a senior Conservative MP, Simon Clarke, has called for Rishi Sunak to be replaced, or he says the Conservative Party will face a massacre at the upcoming general election.
He's writing for the Telegraph newspaper, and in it the former Cabinet Secretary, who served under Liz Truss, warned that the current Prime Minister is leading the party to what he says is extinction.
He also accused the PM of not getting what Britain needs or of listening to what the British people want.
Well, joining us now, political commentator Peter Spencer. Peter, very nice to see you. It's interesting that Clarke says this, that he's not giving the party what it wants or people what they want. And the thing I always notice about Sunak and that a sort of awfully rehearsed way that he talks, he's quite big into what I want to see, what the country wants, and this is what we are delivering. And saying so, Peter, doesn't make it so, though, does it?
It certainly does not. I mean, if we look at Simon Clarke's critique, shall we say, when I first read this, however, and I did think, you're having a laugh, me, old China. I mean, because it is pure la-la land to suggest that you have your fifth Tory leader in 5 years, most of whom have not, in the case of most of them, the electorate has had no say whatever as to who should be Prime Minister. And it is to be noted that there's been a very, very widespread condemnation from all wings of the Conservative Party of what Sir Simon Clarke has said, and that's not surprising because for a middle-ranking officer to call for mutiny on the eve of battle is extraordinarily dangerous and can only help to make what he's suggesting into a self-fulfilling prophecy. That is to say, the Tories head for extinction because they are miles behind in the polls, and one of the key reasons for that has surely got to be that they spend far more time and devote far more energy and enthusiasm to throwing mud pies at one another than they do to caring for.
But Peter, it's all very well for Clarke to say, you know, the Conservative Party must oust the Prime Minister. Oust him in favour of who?
Very, very good question. I mean, most certainly there are several figures on the right of the Tory party who are already on manoeuvres for a leadership contest after the Tories have lost the upcoming election. Oh well, I mean, there's Priti Patel. There's a whole range of them. We know this, but the point is, that I note that Priti Patel, by the way, has also condemned what Sir Simon Clarke has said, and in fact, they've been talking about him being a one-man kamikaze squad, and all that said, I mean, he has some truth in what he says. There is no question that Rishi Sunak has not cut through with the voters when he first became the Prime Minister. His poll rating was way above that of his party. It now is as dire as the party's itself. And I come back to it as long as they keep on squabbling, their overall polls will continue to fall. And we had that last week when there was the huge Rwanda ruckus. Upshot of that was that their poll rating dipped another 4 points. Well, I mean, the only thing that they've got going for them in this case is that Sir Simon Clarke's extraordinary outburst has not gained all that much traction among other major newspapers. We're bringing it up, but I think it'll die relatively quickly because frankly, it's just too silly.
Yeah, but I mean, there were rumours last night that there might even be a cabinet resignation, that someone that's sitting around the table yesterday during the cabinet meeting would in the next few days or indeed the next month or so, there's a by-election coming up, isn't there, possibly
yes.
Resign. And how destabilising do you think all of this is, not only to the premiership of the Prime Minister, but him just being able to focus on the matters in hand? It's a huge distraction, isn't it?
I mean, it is to be noted that a lot of people are saying how touchy he's appearing lately, and no great surprise there, because if I were him, I'd be spitting nails in every possible direction. I mean, look, what's going on here? We've got this Britain taking part in military exercises in the Middle East, and sort of shooting at Houthis, and he's got stuff on his mind, and to be worrying about the mutiny sort of behind him is sort of most certainly it is a huge distraction for him and must be incredibly annoying.
OK, well, thanks for annoying us with all of that analysis this morning, Peter. Very, very good. It'll get... right, so it's in the Telegraph, as you say, not in the other major newspapers today. We'll see if that changes in terms of who's covering this as the morning goes on. For the moment, thank you very much indeed. Very nice talking to you, my friend, and we have to leave it there. Thank you.
We're going to turn to the United States now. Donald Trump won the New Hampshire Republican presidential primary, beating the former United Nations ambassador, Nikki Haley.
Well, it's Trump's second victory this week after winning Iowa last week, cementing his position as front-runner. Here's what he had to say.
We won New Hampshire 3 times now. Three. We win it every time. We win the primary, we win the generals, we've won it, and it's a very, very special place to me. It's very important.
Well, joining us now is former Nevada Republican Party Chair Amy Tarkanian. A very good morning to you. Look, I think perhaps it's no surprise that Donald Trump won in New Hampshire last night. Perhaps what's more surprising is how many votes Nikki Haley did manage to achieve. And I wonder if those people who voted for her clearly lost out and saw Donald Trump win, how many of those could then go on, do you think, to vote for Donald Trump when it comes to the election? And what I'm trying to say is there a section of the Republican Party who just don't want Trump and will be posing a threat to him come November?
Yes, to all of that. You actually saw last night, as you mentioned, there were independents who were able to participate in either the Democratic or the Republican primaries. And so the moderates and the independents actually did go more for Nikki Haley. And I think he's going to struggle with that when it's time for the general. And if it does pan out with the way that it looks like it's going to, where you're going to have another head-to-head against former President Donald Trump with current President Joe Biden, then that's an area that I think both candidates are really going to have to focus on heavily, because there's now an increasing amount of individuals, especially here in the state of Nevada, the registration numbers for nonpartisans and independents lead exponentially. And then in second place, you have Democrats, then Republicans trail in third. And it's because people are really unhappy with our options. And they don't want to see either one of these older gentlemen go at it again. They are now viewed as either ineffective, toxic, chaotic, and we want somebody who's new. And I think that's why Nikki was giving the message that she was giving with trying to say that, we need a new generation of leaders. And so I think that rang true very well to some of those moderate voters.
Amy, she hasn't got a chance. I mean, she's one for the future, perhaps. But come on, let's face it, she's not going to be anywhere significantly in this race.
Well, perhaps not. I mean, she says it's far from over. And we do have something that's called Super Tuesday on March 5th, where there are 16 states that have delegates that are allocated. Now, we have a total of 2,492 that need to be allocated, and a majority of those will actually choose the nominee. But on Super Tuesday, a third of those are divvied out. So there's a lot of time in between South Carolina and Super Tuesday. And as you know, the world of politics, a lot can happen in an hour. But yes, let's go ahead and just read the writing on the wall. It does seem that there's going to be a head-to-head once again with Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
One of the things that could happen, and we talk about this on the programme, is that Mr. Trump could be in jail, or he could be facing a jail sentence as well. So the possibility of something like that could really upset the apple cart.
Well, not with his base, and actually with a number of Republicans who are maybe more soft on him overall. They have actually fed into the fact that he is truly a victim of the justice system, and he has actually done an excellent job at making sure that his base also are victims.
His base, though, isn't enough to get him into the White House. It's about a third of the Republican Party, I'd say. So he needs to persuade some of those more conservative ones. If he is convicted, and he mentioned Super Tuesday, I think he's facing one of his 91 indictments and criminal prosecutions the day before, at least at the beginning of March. Will they be able to vote for him, these people who are, church-going, God-fearing, law-abiding, if he's actually behind bars?
It sounds crazy. But this is not a normal election. And I think we are now looking at two individuals. Donald Trump was at the right place at the right time when he ran against Hillary Clinton because she was so disliked and toxic. And then once his administration was over, he was so toxic and incredibly disliked. Joe Biden was in the right place at the right time. Well, now, once again, you're seeing these two men go at each other head to head. And Joe Biden, he doesn't seem to be, cognitively all there. And he is asleep at the wheel. And so now you have President Trump, who is a bull in a china shop. I don't care for his rhetoric and name calling. I think he's bully and an incredibly rude individual. But right now, the economy is not doing well. People are concerned about illegal immigration, their safety, and it seems that Joe is asleep at the wheel.
Asleep at the wheel. Thank you, Amy. Fascinating talking to you and hearing your take on things. We really do appreciate that. And but we must say goodbye to you now at this stage. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A bull in a china shop, asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, lots of good metaphors in there. It's 6:14. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines this morning. And severe weather's caused major travel disruption overnight. Storm Jocelyn's been sweeping across the UK. Lots of flights have been cancelled, to say the least. Trains suspended. Drivers are also being warned to postpone journeys. And strong winds and rain are expected to continue throughout the rush hour before easing later in the day. Now,
if you have been affected by those storms last night, please do get in touch with us, and we'll try and Zoom you. What you're looking at there is
the former Defence Secretary.
And the British public could face being called up to fight because our military reserves are far too small.
Yeah, that's the warning from General Sir Patrick Sanders, who in a speech later today is set to stress the need for the government to mobilise the nation in the event of war with Russia. According to reports in The Telegraph, General Sir Patrick's also expected to critique cuts to the British Army, which has been reduced to its smallest size in centuries.
The woman known as Britain's strictest head teacher has revealed the shocking abuse she and her staff are receiving over a decision to ban a prayer room at her school. The Michaela school is currently facing a court challenge which alleges the no prayer policy introduced is discriminatory. She sat down last night with Patrick Christie's.
My staff had an attempted break-in at her flat. One of my staff had a brick through her window. We had bottles thrown into the yard. And all because of the prayer situation. It's not right that a head teacher or teachers should be put under that kind of stress because they're just trying to do their jobs.
Now, that is an amazing row, that idea that a prayer room should be banned. What have these people got to fear about prayer? Whatever your religion is, whoever your God is, that you can't spend time in a room talking to someone, being at peace. We can have meditation, we can have mindfulness, we can have all these things, but don't associate prayer with it, that sort of voodoo, witchcrafty type thing, but yet the other stuff's okay.
Well, do you know, Catherine Burblesing's a really fascinating woman. I've had the chance to sit down and talk to her at length. I find her really impressive. And her argument is, fine, if you want a school that has room for prayers, that is absolutely your choice. But that's not what Michaela, her school, is all about, because she's in a highly diverse area. And she says that what she noticed instantly was when this arose, it created segregation. And she's trying to integrate people together. And she didn't want little enclaves of different groups and factions not all mixing. And she said that's what Michaela was all about. It was a distraction from her mission. And I think it's a really interesting debate. So let us know where you stand in all of that.
Well, here's where I stand.
Yeah.
If you stand for nothing, you are nothing at the end of the day. People aren't... Look, I'm a Manchester United supporter. I'm very happy to say I'm a Manchester United supporter. Not that I love all football and I love all football clubs and everybody should get on well together and whatever it is. That's not the way I would see my football. I'm very happy to... It's like your nationality or religion we talk about here as well. Why shouldn't you be able to nail your colours to the mast?
No, but no one's saying you can't. No one's saying that these people can't be Muslim. They can't, be openly practising Muslims. But what she's saying is, do you have to, when you're at school, go off to a room which is exclusive and shuts everybody else out and creates these segregations? And, look, we share a lot of the sort of same religious views, I think it's fair to say, and I think we're both quite tolerant and open-minded towards religion. But I do understand what she's trying to do with this, and I think it's a brave position to take. It is a sad position, I think. It's a bit more the French model, the kind of secular model where there's no...
Where you stand for nothing.
Well,
stand for everything.
But if it's creating a problem for schools, then, you heard what would happen to some of her staff at the school. So, yeah, it's a big debate. Let us know what you think this morning.
She's making it a debate. It doesn't have to be a debate. Why can't it be? Look, I went to religious school and I don't think I'm any the worse for it. I'm old enough, sensible enough, wise enough, or as my mother would say, you're old enough and ugly enough to be able to make decisions for yourself.
But it wasn't multicultural. You went to a school of one faith and probably all of the pupils there were of that faith. Whereas what she's saying is she's got a very mixed bag of children from all different cultures, all different religions, which can be problematic, and she wants to just strip that back
but they
so
can
that they're all
go
finding
to
what they've
the
got
room.
in common.
They can all go to the room when they need to go to the room or go to different rooms or whatever it happens to be. The thing about this country, of course, is you can be before any religion. You can absolutely any religion
apart from Christianity.
Except Christianity, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, they're Christians. Oh, no, goodness me.
Well, don't get
Can't
me started
have that.
on that.
So I just find the whole thing farcical.
Can't even be a Catholic and a Prime Minister in this country, but that's a whole other debate.
Yes, there you go.
2024.
That's a very good point, Isabel. 19 minutes past the hour. Now, here's something else I can't stand. The Oscars. I can't stand them.
Oh, for goodness sake, this is supposed to be a little bit of joy. No, I'm not having it, Eamonn. Come on, it's red carpet, it's glamour, it's escapism.
what is escapism about blooming Barbie last
What do you
summer?
mean? It's the
And then
ultimate
as for,
escapism.
then you want the ass board off. You watch Oppenheimer. You can't watch. Where are the
Have you seen either?
No. Oh, no.
Says it all.
No.
Stephanie
Says it
Petty's
all.
in the house.
What, 3.5 hours of
Says it
Oppenheimer?
all. Yes, but you can't criticise these movies if you haven't
There you
watched
go.
it. And award
They're all
shows.
so
It's
worthy.
like you won
and
awards,
where are the
Eamonn, for
Gerard
your
Butler
career.
movies? Where are those?
Oh,
He just
gosh,
wants plane
they're not
pressure, whatever
worthy
he's
of being
doing.
awarded at all.
Right.
Yes.
So, who is worthy? Because it seems as though Barbie has been massively snubbed.
Yes.
Oh, do you know what? That other thing gets on my nerves.
What does?
What are they called? Pretty Little Things, or what's that called?
Which one?
What's that one that they're all weird in it?
The moon something.
Killers of the Flower Moon?
Killers of the Flower Moon.
What? No, Stranger Things. The weird thing.
God, Stranger
I don't
Things.
even know that's what it's called. It's black and white for the first hour, and then it goes into colour. And that English
Yeah,
actress is.
Help me.
I just looked. It's horrendous.
Okay, let's talk about the Oscars, guys, because the nominations did come out yesterday, as predicted, Eamonn and Isabel. Oppenheimer got 13 awards. Poor Things, which is like the feminist reimagining
Poor
of
Things, that's the one I'm
Frankenstein.
talking about.
Yes, with Emma Stone, 11 nominations. 11 nominations, which was all predictable because it's following the Golden Globes and last week's BAFTA nominations.
So you watched that?
Yes, I have. I loved it. I think it's been a great year for movies, Eamonn, actually. Despite of the strikes, there were some good films that were coming through with strong narratives. But the big headlines this morning is Barbie being snubbed for Best Actress for Margot Robbie and Best Director of Greta Gerwig.
This is, look, I don't want to be... There's a delicious irony, isn't there, that a film that is about defeating the patriarchy has failed to get any nominations apart from the bloke.
Ryan Gosling, who overnight has had to come out with a statement and said that there is no Barbie without Margot Robbie and there's no Barbie without Greta Gerwig. And it just fits in with the feminist time of the film. Last year, for the past couple of years, people haven't been going to the cinemas. Barbie Managed was the highest grossing film of 2023.
Shows how desperate people were.
No, because it shows what we wanted to watch in the cinemas. But, you know, the reason why there's this disconnect, because there's always a difference of taste between the Academy members and what cinema people like to watch.
That's fair enough. I don't think just because something's been popular and been grossing really highly means it's necessarily worth the critics' choice. You know, what you're looking for in an Oscar film is something that will stand the test of time.
Definitely.
That is, you know, I'm not sure that is Barbie. I haven't seen it, caveat, but I just get that impression.
Well, that's it, Isabel. Industry is quite tough and they're more critical when it comes to awards and what they think is worth nominating, where cinema viewers were much more relaxed. We want a bit of entertainment, we want comedy, we want the Gerard Butlers like Eamonn's after, so that's why there's this whole disconnect. But there's been other snubs as well. Saltburn, which has been highly critically acclaimed, didn't get any nominations, and last week it was nominated for Outstanding British Film at the BAFTAs. So there's always this disconnect when it comes to what's going to be popular on the night. Leonardo DiCaprio, again, he's been snubbed, but he's always had a hard relationship with Oscars. It took him until 2016 to receive his first Oscar, and he's had such an amazing career over 30 years. So
who are the big, sort of, to be tipped? I heard it's something to do with Bradley Cooper versus Cillian Murphy.
Yes. So Bradley Cooper in Maestro, he done an amazing performance
He got
there.
snubbed last week, didn't
he?
he?
Did.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's always pick and mix. You know, you can't win them all, and it's always on the night. You'll be surprised who actually wins, because people think Cillian Murphy's going to win, but I actually think it might be Bradley Cooper's year to
I
win.
love them both. So.
Which is the most miserable of the two films? That's the one. That's the one that'll win.
Oppenheimer, it will. And, you know, it's already been doing so well during awards season, so I can imagine on the night it's just going to continue
I
trends.
watched the film recently, which
Napoleon.
I thought was absolutely superb, and that was Napoleon.
Yeah, again.
Ridley Scott, and I thought, for me, it was very much my sort of film. Good quality, very good level, very sustainable to watch.
I really want to see that.
Is it up for anything?
No, it's not. And that's the thing. And this is what, there's this big conversation in the industry is how relevant awards are at the moment, because we know on the night we love the fashion, we love having a glimpse of celebrities, but in general, it's not really in touch with what the audience want anymore. But there will always be award shows. It's like our own industry awards. We like to be recognised, and this is why these actors get really really annoyed when they get snubbed because they put the work in and they want that recognition from their peers. There's 10,000 members of the Academy, and for them to snub Barbie, it just doesn't make sense.
Interesting.
What have you gone to watch, Stephanie, in your role professionally and personally, that you would come away and say, I had a really good night? You see, the thing about it is, if I leave the cinema at the end of the night and say, I really enjoyed that, that was a really good film, I don't want to come away and say, I was profoundly moved by what I saw there. I'm depressed enough. I don't need any more depression in my life or world events and whatever. Movies to me are escapism. Where's the latest Star Trek film with Christopher Pine? Superb, absolutely superb actor as well. Don't see anything. Why is that not being made? And, you know, so that's what I want. I want escapism and I want entertainment.
Well, you know, it's not one size that fits all when it comes to movies. You know, some people, they like the hard-hitting narratives of storylines. Some people want the depressing stuff, and when other people want the romantic stuff. But again, it's like...
I just want Jared Butler. Have you seen
Oh,
Plane?
my gosh, we need to get Jared Butler on the show.
Oh, you should be. Have you seen Plane?
No.
Oh, brilliant.
No.
Do you know what happens? So he's flying the plane, right, and then it crashes in this jungle.
Yeah.
And then these baddies sort of hijack
Goodies and
everybody
baddies.
that's left, and
Really
they try
simple.
to get to run drug. It's brilliant.
We need
Very
to
good.
get Jared Butler
and basically
on.
Jared Butler kills them all. They're all dead at the end of it. Very, very good.
Sounds excellent. That sounds really uplifting and,
Yeah,
cheerful.
very Eamonn night. Very Eamonn night.
You know,
It's been
I
a
was
pleasure.
watching films. I was watching. You two won't even know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But there were some superb films on over Christmas. Where Eagles Dare, The Magnificent Seven, as well. The Dirty Dozen. I mean, you might say this is a good thing, but they don't make them like that anymore. But some really, really good stuff on the telly, but all the streaming business.
Well, I did, based on the Oscars last year, sit through The Whale, and it took me 3 nights.
I
And
love The Whale.
Didn't.
Well, that's the thing about award shows, guys. It brings titles which we don't necessarily know about, and then it piques the public's interest to kind of see what all the hype is about.
That's
you
why
know?
I watched them. Yeah. Anyway, Steph, we could talk to you all day.
Thank you,
Thank you very
guys.
much. Lovely to see you. Right, Storm Jocelyn. Is it over? What more is to come?
Well, I think it's been pretty bad for a lot of people, particularly Northern Ireland and Scotland last night. Our commiserations with you, and we don't really find out how bad it's been until the day progresses. But Alex Deakin with the weather picture as it stands at the moment.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Still very windy out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn is clearing away today. Bright and blustery for most. As I say, there are still warnings in place, particularly gusty over northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland through the morning time. Still a potential for further disruption. And then the winds will steadily ease a bit this afternoon, but it stays blustery. We'll see cloud and patchy rain for South Wales, southwest England. Plenty of showers coming into western Scotland, but many central and eastern areas will be dry and bright with some sunny spells. Feels a bit fresher than yesterday. Temperatures, though, still 9 to 11 Celsius, a touch above average for this time of the year. Through this evening, we'll continue to see showers coming into Scotland. The winds will continue to ease. In the south, we are looking at thickening cloud and some outbreaks of rain trickling more widely over southern England and South Wales. And some of that rain will head towards Northern Ireland by dawn. Chilly one across Scotland, a hint of blue there, so some pockets of frost are possible. Most towns and cities start Thursday at 4 or 5 Celsius. Starting dull and damp across the Midlands, North Wales and Northern Ireland. Tomorrow that rain will spread steadily into parts of Scotland, northeast England. Also turns a little drier further south, but staying pretty grey, I suspect, and cloudy. And the winds will start to pick up once more. Nothing as lively as today, but the breeze will pick up. And tomorrow will be a milder day, double digits across the board.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
6:30 is the time. A very good morning to you. Eamonn and Isabel here. Breakfast on GB News.
And North Yorkshire Emergency Services have teamed up with counter-terrorism police and York Minster Police to respond to a series of staged terror attacks in and around York Minster.
Now, this comes following the Manchester Arena inquiry, which set out an expectation that venues such as York Minster should conduct reviews to understand the risks of terrorism and take measures to mitigate against them.
Our reporter Anna Riley has the story and a warning her report contains flashing lights and graphic images.
This is Operation Obtundity, a planned exercise at York Minster to prepare emergency services for a real-life terror attack. Police, fire and rescue and ambulance crews descended upon the cathedral in response to a staged acid assault upon a VIP visitor, a hostile vehicle and knife attack, and a siege, all involving 300 volunteers. The iconic landmark is one that needs protecting as it's visited by thousands each year, including royalty.
It's at least 12 months in the planning this exercise and comes at a really important juncture for York Minster, for the police we have here. It was less than 12 months ago we had the King and the Queen here for the Royal Maundy. So high profile, very high profile visitors do happen regularly at York Minster. We need to be prepared.
The exercise is part of a regular counter-terrorism programme which takes place across high profile venues in the UK to test the response of emergency services to a series of no-notice violent attacks to stop them and save lives.
This scenario is really important for us to practice. Sadly, terrorist incidents like this have happened in the past. We've had the Manchester Arena inquiry, and the learning outcomes from that have driven all blue light services to train and prepare in this way. We want to improve from things that have happened in the past, and this is the best way to do that, to train together as blue light services, challenge our people as much as we can, and we've done that this evening just so people can prepare in the right way should this sadly happen in the future.
The operation was invaluable for all emergency services, including fire and rescue, who saved and treated casualties at the scene.
It's a long time in the making, is this. You know, it's not every day you get to run around the Minster like we are and putting people with legs and blood everywhere. And it's extremely important for us to, one, test as a fire service our response and our procedures, but two, to test that multi-agency response and the procedures that go with that as well.
To prosecute those responsible for a terrorist attack, it's crucial for police to interview all witnesses, and a command centre was set up near the Minster for police to hone their skills.
Obviously, there's a long-term investigation that would come out of something like this, and we have what we call the golden hour principle, which is about capturing that key evidence as early as possible, because obviously, as time goes on, people's memories fade, and so that vital information can be lost. So it's really important that we capture as much detail as possible from them at an early stage.
Emergency services here in North Yorkshire are now more prepared than ever for a terrorist attack, should the worst happen. Anna Riley, GB News, York.
Your reaction to that, very welcome. Let's go through the latest sports news. Paul Coit with that today. Listen, there I was, hoping against hope that Middlesbrough would get to the cup final.
I know.
And by the time it switched on, half an hour hadn't gone and they were 2-0 down.
got worse, went all the way through to six goals Chelsea scored. See, the thing is, it all kind of fit into place for Chelsea, and people talking about Mauricio Pochettino, is he the right guy? But it all went very well. So Chelsea 6, Middlesbrough 1. Middlesbrough, the fans, if it was to do with the fans and the noise that the fans made, then Middlesbrough would have won 10-0 because their fans were amazing, but unfortunately when it came to football, not quite there. So patience is key, is what Pochettino has said. Could be the first silverware, but he will face either Fulham or Liverpool, and they play in the second semi-final today.
Well,
I feel that will be Liverpool.
Big thrill in our house last night for Chelsea. As towards the end, they made a substitution for Raheem Sterling.
Yes.
Along comes young Leo Castledine. That's not him, but anyway, he's a very close friend of the family.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Quite an acting family, I believe. The mum's the TV presenter, and dad is
Lucy Alexander,
a former footballer, and
yes, and
the daughter is actress, right?
And they're lovely, aren't they?
And the daughter's now in Kitty is in EastEnders.
Wow.
Is the wheelchair character.
And the dog won Crufts, I believe, is true.
Did Lucy manage to get to the game to watch?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
She's at the game as well. And so it was an absolutely amazing night. So good lad, plays really well. Just in the wrong colour.
Of course he is. You never know, so just have a quiet word. You never know. Eric Ten Hag may give him a call.
Now, trophies. We're going to talk about trophies, my friend, because this is ever since Sunday. And do we have a picture of Rory McIlroy?
Rory, yeah, this is the Dubai Desert.
This is the biggest trophy you'll ever see in the world. I don't know if we have any of these. They're not Keras, do we?
We have. There we are. Look at the size of that trophy.
This is unbelievable. Right, so what size of mantelpiece would you have to have?
See, and also, what is it? I mean, what do you make tea in it?
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
It's a traditional Arab teapot.
So there we are. So that's what Rory's won. So Eamonn was saying...
Rory's? Is that it's like Rory and his twin?
Well, look at those teeth, though. I mean, there's sets of teeth there. But the thing is that I know you were saying it was the biggest trophy. Yes. So I've done a little research on other ones. Try this one. I mean, this is huge. The Stanley Cup, ice hockey in the States. This is a very, very big trophy. I think we've got the... Look at the size of that one. Oh, my word. Look at the size of that. And that is a full-size man, by the way. Yes. That is not just a smaller trophy.
Such a man item, isn't it? Look how big his trophy is.
And I'm on skates. And I'm skating around.
Where the bottom is with that. Right, OK. Can you beat that one in any way?
How about the pre-season tournament in Spain, the Costa del Sol trophy? This is just going over the top with trophy. Look at that.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
It's humongous. Look, that actually takes 2 players to carry.
Isn't the FA Cup that kind of size?
No.
When I thought it was huge.
No. Well, you've already
know what you saw, but no, that's not even close to that. That's like an anchor or something.
It is enormous.
And really ridiculous.
I do have one more. The Summer Grand Sumo tournament in May, held in Japan, is called the President's Cup. And have a look at the size of this one. Keep your eyes on the cup, please.
Busy looking at his bottom.
Eyes on the cup.
Goodness me.
1.37 metres in height, weighing 30 kilograms. That is the cup, not either of the two gentlemen there on the left or the right. It is Donald Trump, the President's Cup. There he is, looking very, very happy, handing over the President's Cup. Look at the size of that cup. You can't look at the cup, can you? But there we are. That's one of the biggest ones as well. And I'm talking about the cup again.
Look at his thighs.
Are we talking about Donald, or are we talking about the sumo wrestler?
I didn't see Donald's thighs, but those sumo thighs were sizable.
Well, I mean, he was the champion.
I had big thighs when I was at school. I was a runner.
Did you chafe, though, as you were running with those size of those thighs? Yeah, with the size of the thighs. Yeah. Rubbing together there.
I was lucky enough I didn't know.
OK.
It was OK.
OK, I just worry for you, that's all. Because it often can be a worry if you're a middle-distance runner and your thighs are too large.
Yeah.
You know.
Chafing.
That's what you see with the gladiators at the weekend. They walk weirdly. Is that chafing thighs?
Exactly, probably is. What, they're sort of out like that. They waddle, don't they?
They waddle, yeah. I didn't ever think about the sort of side effects of being humongous like that.
That's it. See?
Walk like an Egyptian.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Thank you very much indeed, my friends. See you again in an hour's time. Coming up and making the news, we'll be taking a look at the front pages and the top stories with Claire Purcell and Nigel Nelson.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Front pages on this Wednesday morning. Here's how they stack up.
The Telegraph says Sunak should be ousted if the Tories wish to survive the election.
Guardian leads with the Prime Minister warning of growing attacks in Yemen as tensions in the region rise.
Top story for the FT, Israel defying ceasefire calls in Gaza.
The Independent's investigation showed 30 NHS mental health workers being suspended for malpractice.
And The Sun leads with the Barnaby, the mother of killed students in Nottingham. The mother of one of those, Barnaby, has slammed her son's killer.
And that is the saddest story that you'll see in a long, long time. Joining us to debate that and much, much more, we have husband and wife team of Claire Purcell and Nigel Nelson. Thank you both very much indeed. Claire, let's begin with this Nottingham killing. And yesterday, I tell you, it's very rare that I would be affected by a news story, but I watched this yesterday and it just brought a tear to my eye. Grace O'Malley's, Kumar's brother, talking about how his life was over because he's lost his sister and how his parents' life is ruined and his life for the rest of his, as long as he lives, he just won't be able to get over this. But the killer, tell us about the fate that he received.
Well, this chap, Valdo Kalakani, has been not charged with murder, but manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. And I think you're right when you say it does affect you. And I think it affected me more when it was Grace's father who gave the most gracious but heart-wrenching speech, who said justice has not been done for my daughter and her friend. He wanted the killer to go down with a murder charge, but unfortunately it was decided that he would be done for manslaughter. And it's such a categorical mistake by so many agencies when you read through the chances that they had to catch Valdo, to admit him into a psychiatric hospital, which he had been in previously. Former flatmates had expressed concerns. He had been given the name of a serial killer, but he was allowed to be roaming around the university town, the university that he graduated from, in spite of all of this. And nobody stepped in, nobody dealt with it. And it just beggars belief that 3 lives, 2 very young lives, and there's another chap whose van was taken to then go and kill other people, have had their lives taken away by this individual.
Well, you say an individual, he's a paranoid schizophrenic as well, and he had 2 names in court. Which struck me as, like, you know, just the irony upon irony. Nigel, what's your take on this?
Well, I mean, I think that you were right first time round. It is certainly the saddest story of the day. And the kind of feeling is that these things happen. There are people out there just like this, with mental health issues. And so the result is you just never know when and where you're safe, which I think is always the most scary part. Because these killings were completely random. And on the basis of that, that could happen anywhere. I mean, fortunately, we've got gun control in this country, so we don't have the kind of massacres very often that you see in America. But it's still a scary story because it could be any one of us.
Yeah, and the details of it, his former flatmate saying it was a ticking time bomb and one girl jumping out of a window to escape him. And then the story of heroism, of how Grace actually intervened and tried to protect Barnaby Webber whilst he was being stabbed to death. She had the opportunity to run and could have escaped death herself, and she stayed and heroically tried to rescue him and then suffered a brutal
But the big question is, why is he not facing murder charges? That's the question.
Well, I guess, I mean, the law is the law. If 3 psychiatrists have said that he's a paranoid schizophrenic, then he does have grounds for diminished responsibility.
That's right. That's basically right. I mean, because he's got mental health problems, he can plead a diminished responsibility. I mean, it doesn't mean that he won't get quite a long time behind bars, but obviously he's treated differently than he would be if he was done for murder.
But I think he's sectioned anyway, won't he?
It's the perception of murder and then manslaughter with diminished responsibility doesn't seem to fit the crimes that have taken place. It feels a lesser charge, even though he will get a substantial sentence. It still doesn't quite cover the horrific nature of what he did.
It's terrible, terrible, terrible story. Should we turn to The Telegraph? Lots of amazing stories coming out of The Telegraph today. But this one is about Lord Cameron, our Foreign Secretary, returning this week to the Middle East. And this is to press for an immediate humanitarian pause in fighting. What are they saying, Claire?
David Cameron, Lord Cameron, is going to go out there to try and get the two-state solution really back on the menu after Benjamin Netanyahu has stated that he wouldn't accept that. Lord Cameron is going out there to try and smooth the wheels to see if that can happen. He's going to go out there and visit Qatar, Israel, Turkey to try and garner the support to look for a humanitarian pause and to see if there is any movement. I mean, Qatar are being quite instrumental in brokering the peace process and have had some success, but we do need a much stronger humanitarian pause. Aid has to be able to get through. And I think that opinion is now forming much more of a ceasefire, even though it still seems so far removed from what's going to happen. When you listen to most of the reports coming out of Israel and Gaza, it seems like the last thing that's going to happen. But if, and it's a really big if, David Cameron can get this off the ground, then we are at the start of something which looks like the recovery process within the Middle East.
But can there be a recovery process, Nigel? When, you know, the small print here, Downing Street says Cameron will raise the importance of the two-state solution, just days after President Netanyahu has said there will be no two-state solution.
Well, he sort of... Netanyahu has slightly changed his tune. I think that's under pressure from President Biden. What he's saying is he's prepared to consider a two-state solution provided that Palestine is demilitarised. I find this a bit peculiar. If you decide to turn Palestine into a sovereign state, do you then say to them, but you can't have a standing army or defend yourself or anything like that? And that's where I think there's a tricky bit. I mean, certainly the Israelis, we've been trying for a two-state solution for years and years and got nowhere, that they just won't do it. He's come a bit further towards that, which, as I say, sounds like a basis for negotiation, but whether the Palestinians will be able to accept that, I don't know.
Let's talk about the big political story of the day, Claire, and that is Sir Simon Clarke. And he's basically saying to the Conservative Party, so he stood up and said, get rid of Rishi Sunak, or this, as a party, Conservative as a party, will become extinct.
I sat there with my head in my hands last night when this news broke, because you just sort of think, at what point do you think that changing the leader is going to make any difference to this?
And you say this as a Conservative, someone who's advised within the Home Office. Are you still a Tory councillor?
I am not, no, but I'm still a card-carrying member of the Tory party, and it pains me to see these kind of stories come up. The great relief of waking up this morning, it's a very early hour, was no one else has joined in. Simon Clarke is a lone voice. And it is
except
quite...
the rumour mill is that there are people who were sitting around the cabinet table yesterday morning with the Prime Minister who are contemplating handing in their resignation.
But you get those stories all the time, just about, the same stories about letters going into the 1922 chair, people are going to resign, people are on resignation watch, and you just sort of think, right...
Well, the last time was Robert Jenrick, and it happened a few days later. All the rumours were circling, and boom.
They were, but no one else has resigned. So this hasn't been the kind of downfall.
What's Clarke's political ambition? Does he see himself as a leader of the Conservatives?
I think there are an awful lot of people that see themselves as leaders, and it looks a little bit like personal fortunes over party fortunes. What's quite interesting is all of those people that have come out and said, you need to stop this, pipe down at the back, and many other words. Dame Priti Patel is one of those, Sir Liam Fox is another one, Sir David Davis, quite senior Tories. They haven't quite gone as far as saying Rishi Sunak has our support. They are telling Simon Clarke to button it and think of the party, think of the stability of the country. So I think it's quite interesting, the words that are being used. So it's not exactly circling the wagons around Rishi Sunak, it is circling the wagons in a slightly different area that may put them forward for leadership in the future.
There's also another layer to all of this, because obviously there was that shocking poll last Monday, wasn't there? Just the timing, just before the Rwanda bill, which came out basically saying it's going to be an annihilation, it's going to be the worst ever election for the Conservatives. Well, it's this poll that Sir Simon is referring to in his article in The Telegraph today, and you have a theory about who might have been behind the poll.
I do. I think that the one, Simon Clarke, may actually have a hand in this, along with Lord Frost. It just feels a little bit convenient that came out and then was rubbished quite an awful lot of people. And the election guru, Isaac Levido, was in only last week talking to Tory MPs saying about divided parties and that poll is nonsense and there are questions about the data. For it to then be brought up by Simon Clarke saying we're going to be annihilated, it all just seems a little bit cosy.
Yeah, interesting.
Nigel, what should we expect from our councils, from our town councils, our city councils, our what other councils are there?
Parish councils.
There's parish councils. I mean, it's a bit complicated. Unitary authorities.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole host of them.
County councils.
Really, what you need to expect from them is all the services we take for granted but are terribly important. So it's things like your leisure centres, your schools,
your
bin
bins,
collections.
Your social care.
Well, the social care is the one that causes the most problems, but also people are also terribly concerned about the 3 Ps. If you ask any council leader, the 3 Ps are planning, parking and potholes. That's what people really get concerned about. Problem local authorities have got is that the cost of social care has gone shooting up. Trying to deal with homelessness has gone shooting up. In the meantime, the central funding from government has gone down by 27% since 2010.
Central government get off with a lot here because I think social care should be the responsibility of central government, not county councils.
Well, there's always that. I mean, I think it should be administered, certainly. I mean, the funding should come from central government. It should be administered at a local level because that's the best way of actually doing it. But at the moment, that council just don't have the money. So what is going to happen if they don't get it is they're going to go bankrupt.
Well, that's why I ask you, what are they being asked to do? For instance, preventing homelessness is now part of their remit as well. And I think this is an essential thing. In any humane society, homelessness should not be tolerated. But is it the responsibility of local government to do it or the responsibility of central government? And this whole question of funding and who funds.
Yeah, I think local government, having sat for 8 years on a local authority, are best placed in things like homelessness. They know the area, they tend to know the individuals involved, you get the same people coming up. So they really are best placed to do it, but they don't have the funding. And we expect our councils now to provide so much for so little.
But then what I'm saying, and the reason I asked Nigel the question in the first place is, do we expect too much? Are there certain things that they should just cut adrift and say, not our problem?
No, I don't think they can. And I don't think they would want to. When you speak to other council leaders, they take it incredibly seriously, their responsibilities, whether they're statutory or whether they are the things you like to have, like libraries, which we think are important. But it isn't really that sort of a statutory responsibility. But councils want to be able to provide. They take money off individuals every single month in council tax, and they want to provide the best service they can for the majority.
Yeah, for the majority. But then you have these councils that are going under, have gone under. I'm thinking Woking Borough Council and the chief execs have gone off to retire on insane final salary schemes for all eternity, and meanwhile the council's imploding and those services are just not being provided.
And that's the problem when you have some councils with large budgets like that, and in the management, it's a very top-heavy management. When you get down to the people that actually do the jobs, it's very, very different. Now, I was really lucky and I worked for a council which didn't have a very top-heavy management structure and invested in the people around them and tried to look for savings amongst staff, amongst the properties that they owned, because they knew that government funding was going to dry up, and this was over 10 years ago. So they made that plan. Other councils have spent while the time is good and haven't saved for the future.
But you see, Nigel, when people get their rates, their demands coming in, they always look and they say, what am I paying that for? Where is that going? Why have I to pay that much?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing at least you can see now on your council tax bill is you will see it'll actually show you where the money goes to. So you'll see the money that goes to the police, for instance, in your area. You'll get some idea of what you are paying for.
OK, right. Well, we're asking you at home, listening and watching, what would you like to see cut? What would you like to see be the sole responsibility? What would you like to see changed as regards
bills going
your
down.
local council? gbviews@gbnews.com. We'll be back after this. Here's your weather update with Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Still very windy out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn is clearing away today. Bright and blustery for most. As I say, there are still warnings in place, particularly gusty over northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland through the morning time. Still a potential for further disruption. And then the winds will steadily ease a bit this afternoon, but it stays blustery. We'll see cloud and patchy rain for South Wales, southwest England. Plenty of showers coming into western Scotland, but many central and eastern areas will be dry and bright with some sunny spells. Feels a bit fresher than yesterday. Temperatures, though, still 9 to 11 Celsius, a touch above average for this time of the year. Through this evening, we'll continue to see showers coming into Scotland. The winds will continue to ease. In the south, though, we are looking at thickening cloud and some outbreaks of rain trickling more widely over southern England and South Wales. And some of that rain will head towards Northern Ireland by dawn. Chilly one across Scotland, a hint of blue there, so some pockets of frost are possible. Most towns and cities start Thursday at 4 or 5 Celsius. Starting dull and damp across the Midlands, North Wales and Northern Ireland. Tomorrow that rain will spread steadily into parts of Scotland, northeast England also. Turns a little drier further south, but staying pretty grey, I suspect, and cloudy. And the winds will start to pick up once more. Nothing as lively as today, but the breeze will pick up. And tomorrow will be a milder day, double digits across the board.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel. Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's fast approaching 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 24th of January. You are very welcome to breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
It's now approached 7 o'clock.
There you go.
That's it. It's not on 7 o'clock. Leading our news on this Wednesday morning, pressure on the Prime Minister. He's facing calls to resign following a scathing attack from former Cabinet Minister Sir Simon Clarke.
Donald Trump's sailed to victory in New Hampshire overnight, beating his rival Nikki Haley. So is a Trump v Biden rematch now inevitable?
Storm Jocelyn continuing to cause chaos with your commute this morning after another night of strong winds and heavy rains. Alex Deakin with the forecast throughout the morning.
Very windy again out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn will clear away through the day today and the winds will slowly be easing. Bright and blustery with sunshine and a few showers. A full forecast coming up later.
Bright and blustery, who does that remind you of?
It's me.
Yeah.
Yes. Listen, it's not disrespectful to say spanked or thrashed or anything like that. When I'm talking about football, by the way, that is, Eamonn, before you jump in, mister.
It would depend on the context.
OK, fine. Always the context. Chelsea spank and thrash Middlesbrough to make it into the Carabao Cup final. On the eve of the first test in India, an England bowler is not allowed into the country, and a qualifier has made it to the semi-finals of the Australian Open. First qualifier since 1978.
See, the thing about Chelsea last night, I mean, they lose the first leg in the Carabao Cup.
Yeah.
And then how come they just collapse? Middlesbrough collapsed last night.
Yeah, the pressure. And Chelsea was so good as well last night as well, they were.
You don't know what you're getting.
You don't know what you're getting, but maybe it's all coming together for them.
Yeah, OK, so it's a cup final for them.
It is.
Congratulations to them. And you can join in any of our discussions, which you have been doing.
Yes, you've been very good. There have been a few controversial opinions on the programme this morning, and you have come back with your thoughts. Lots of talk about Simon Clarke. Is he spot on or not? Ian in Wellingborough says he's spot on. Sunak out or Tories gone. Meanwhile, Pixie says, is the Conservative Party mad? That's why they're in the state they are, because they got rid of Boris against the voters' will. Why do they think a new PM will win the election? We've also been talking about prayer rooms at school. Lots of you getting hot under the collar about this. Eamonn, I disagree with you. Kids go to school not to worship, Kyle says. John says secular schools are fine, faith schools are fine. Don't try to mix them together. Keep your thoughts coming.
I don't see the problem with mixing them together. I went to faith school, you know, I went to learn how to worship as well. I don't see what the issue is, and I don't see what the issue is being in schools and saying, if that's your religion, that's your room, go and have a think about that or a prayer about that. If that's your religion, you go to that room or whatever.
What if it's 5 times a day?
Why would it be 5 times
Well,
a day?
Muslims pray 5 times a day. It's constant disruption to the timetable of the school. And it becomes a particularly narrow group of people going. It's very diverse school that Catherine Bunn
What I
sings
did,
at.
one of the best experiences of my life, I used to be a presenter on Songs of Praise on BBC, and to actually understand and know other people's faith just gives you a better understanding of everything.
Totally agree with that, yeah.
With that. But anyway, you don't like religion in this country, do you? This always amazes me. It's not like Mother Ireland where everybody's going around blessing themselves and whatever, but no, you don't like... They don't like it in England. Secular.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they don't like certain religions. I don't know what it is, but
they don't
keep
like
those
religion, full
thoughts
stop.
coming in.
And also, the biggest sin you can ever make is to be Christian in this country.
Well, that's it.
That seems to be it. Run the sting.
So we're going to keep the controversial theme going. Donald Trump, he's a divisive character. He won the New Hampshire Republican presidential primary yesterday, beating the former United Nations ambassador, Nikki Haley.
It's his second victory after winning Iowa last week, cementing his position as front runner. And here's what he had to say last night.
You know, we won New Hampshire 3 times now. Three. We win it every time. We win the primary, we win the generals, we've won it, and it's a very, very special place to me. It's very important.
Right, well, we are now joined by the 2020 Republican presidential candidate Joe Walsh, as well as former advisor to the Bank of England and political commentator Roger Gewolbe. You're both, I believe, from Chicago. Welcome to the programme. Thanks very much for your time. Let's start with you, Joe. We haven't heard your views very recently in all of this. What do you make of the way things are going for Trump?
It's over. Good to be with you. It's over. It was always over. It was over a week ago. It was over 2 months ago. It was over 8 months ago. Look, this is Trump's party. I'm no fan of Trump. I think he is an existential threat to our democracy. But Republican voters love him. This is his party. He was always going to be the nominee. It's going to be Trump versus Biden.
So, Roger...
So when you say it's over, just to be clear, you don't mean it's over for Trump. You mean it's just beginning. It's nailed on. It's a cert. He's a cert.
Yeah, thank you. No. Yes, the nomination fight is over. That was always over. Yes, it now moves on. Trump will be the Republican nominee. I think he always was going to be the Republican nominee because Republican voters absolutely love him.
What I think is absolutely fascinating about this, Roger, is that we are hearing a number of Republican voices saying that the selection of Donald Trump is, as Joe says, an existential threat to democracy.
Well, I think that, first of all, Joe is speaking American political shorthand. I think I should say for our audience here, I mean, he's quite right. But when he says it's over, I believe what he means is that the process of winning primaries and being nominated is over. So Trump will be the Republican candidate. I think that saying that Donald Trump is an existential threat, especially for someone like Joe, who until he became independent, and I believe it was 2020, agreed with so many Trump-like principles, strikes me as a bit strange. And I'm not quite sure where he is now, but he certainly embraced a lot of things that I personally would agree with, some of them. And, you know, when he ran for president, when he served in Congress and then left not that long later, he was representing one view. He attacked Barack Obama grievously and was criticized for it very heavily. I'm not a fan of President Obama, but now he's, I just don't understand, Joe, how you can embrace Joe Biden when you've been such a critic of Obama, Obamacare. You were a strident, ardent Tea Party member. Okay. I mean, I just don't get it.
Still am, Roger. Still am. Good to be with you this morning, Roger. Still am. I'm an ardent conservative Tea Partier who voted for Trump in 2016.
What's a Tea Partier? Sorry, for us English people, what do you mean by a Tea Partier?
Can I explain? Shorthand, a far-right conservative Republican, a very conservative Republican. And I still am, and I voted against Trump in 2020. I actually voted for Biden, a Democrat, for the first time. I represent a big part of what Donald Trump's problem is, because a lot of us conservatives have left the Republican Party and want nothing to do with this ugly and divisiveness that Trump has brought on. Let's remember, I'll make it simple, Roger. Donald Trump's the only president in American history who lost an election and refused to participate in the peaceful transfer of power. He refused to accept an election loss. And then, Roger, he did something even worse. He tried to overthrow that election. That kind of bothered me, and that bothered a lot of conservatives. And this is going to be a problem for Trump when he tries to win in November.
Do you think that's right, Roger? I mean, I think there's something like half of the people who wanted Nikki Haley in New Hampshire yesterday will not be able to vote for Donald Trump on the basis of the twice impeached, the insurrection, whether or not you accept his involvement in that, and the huge number of indictments he's facing.
Let me say this as an Illinois lawyer and former adjunct professor of law at the University of Illinois. These charges against Trump are criminal charges. As you know, Joe, they have to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. I think there's enough evidence out there that there was something not right with the elections. You and I both know, you and I have both grown up with there almost always being 20 or 40,000 votes from the cemetery in our hometown. You know, there's enough evidence floating around. I think it would be very hard for a jury to convict him. I certainly don't think he's been found guilty of the insurrection. So, I mean, you've never been a man not to make extreme statements, and I as I say, a few of your extreme statements I completely agree with. But I think you're wrong here. I think that Trump, I don't think that, I know that Trump is the first non-incumbent Republican to gain a primary as he has last night. So whatever you talk about the history, he's certainly on a roll now, and you guys are in the minority.
There we go.
Among Republicans, yes, no doubt about that. And I'll acknowledge that, Roger. Look, this is Donald Trump's party. The Republican Party is his. The nomination is his. He's running against Joe Biden, and it's going to be a real close general election because Trump is a very divisive dude. You have to admit that, Roger. Give me that, huh?
Just a final question to you, because you are in the States, Joe. I'm reading in the British press this morning that Murdoch's Fox News won't be supporting Trump in the same way this time around. I mean, it was described as being aggressive support in the previous election. Why do you think that might be, and how pivotal could that be to his success or lack thereof?
Well, because Trump cost him a lot of money, because as Donald Trump lied about the election in 2020, Fox News echoed those lies, and to the tune of, what, almost $1 billion. So it cost Fox a lot of money. But I have no doubt Fox News is going to step right back up and be in Trump's corner this election against Biden, because that's what they do. So they'll support Trump.
OK.
Joe Walsh, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And Roger, lovely seeing you again.
Yeah,
see you again soon. Thank you very much indeed. Storm Jocelyn last night hit the UK. Once again, wild winds and heavy rains in lots of places. It certainly disrupted the morning commute. Storm Aisha, of course, just 2 days behind us. And again, it caused lots of problems for transport disruption, power cuts, damage to buildings. Let's go to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. Northern Ireland, Dougie has received a lot of the wrath of these two storms. How did last night go?
Well, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. And yes, it was a blustery night, it's got to be said. It wasn't anywhere near what the previous night was. There was a few trees down around Northern Ireland. A few commuters this morning will face problems getting into work. And of course, there are more people out of power. Some of them actually never got back their power from 2 nights previously. But all in all, Northern Ireland got away with that not too badly. I mean, I was feeding livestock last night at about 8:30 in the middle of a field, and I felt a lot worse, I must say. The northwest of the province was definitely received high winds last night, but really most of the damage and most of those storms seem to have been heading towards Scotland, and especially into the north of Scotland.
Did you feed Isabel last night? How's she coping in the storms?
Isabel's doing very well. We actually, I'll send you another picture of Isabel and how she's going at this minute in time.
Right.
We had her name tag and all in her. She was in great form.
People who haven't been long-time watchers, because we're attracting new ones all the time, Dougie, we just have to explain to newbies that you've named a cow after me for reasons I still don't understand.
Well, I did. It was a good job. I was talking to the cows one morning, and you know, Eamonn had asked me, do you ever name any of the cows? So we named one Isabel, and Isabel's in great form. She's not yet into the herd, but, you know, she'll not be long, she will be.
Yeah,
She will be.
That's good. So the good news is so far no news of any fatalities or awful serious injuries or anything like that after last night.
No, definitely not. And as I say, damage-wise, Northern Ireland has been pretty good. In fact, the storm Jocelyn was named after a astrophysicist from Northern Ireland, and she was quite good to us last night. But there is other things in mind in Northern Ireland in this week coming, and of course it's this day last week, I was sitting exactly here, and we were talking about whether those elections, Chris Heaton-Harris would call elections to the place behind us, because of course Northern Ireland has had no government for the past 2 years because of those post-Brexit negotiations. First there was the protocol, then the framework document, of which unionists objected to. And Chris Heaton-Harris, the Secretary of State, will get to his feet today in the House of Commons, and he will try to get legislation passed that will give an extension to Northern Ireland before he has to call an election. And people were thinking that was going to be about a year. Well, he surprised everybody and decided that it's only going to be 2 weeks. The 8th of February will be that new deadline. And of course, that is seen some ways as people are looking at this is pressure on the DUP, the main unionist party behind us here, to go back into government. Others are saying, and I would be amongst them, that a deal is very, very close. And what the unionists here are basically saying to the Westminster MPs is it your job to support unionists and give the best deal to those British citizens, or do you want a different deal? And of course, if they want to support those British citizens here are looking for a deal that will give Northern Ireland an advantage in the commercial marketplace, and we'll see how that goes in Westminster today.
Dougie Beattie, live from Parliament Buildings in Stormont. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Stay safe.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. And the British public have faced being called to fight because our military is too small. That's the warning from General Sir Patrick Sanders, who in a speech later today is set to stress the need for government to mobilise the nation in the event of war. According to reports in the Telegraph this morning, General Sir Patrick's also expected to critique cuts to the British Army, which has been reduced to its smallest size in centuries.
The woman known as Britain's strictest head teacher, Catherine Burbissing, has revealed the shocking abuse she and her staff are receiving over a decision to ban a prayer room at her school. The Michaela school is currently facing a court challenge which alleges the no prayer policy introduced is discriminatory. She appeared with Patrick Christie's last night.
My staff had an attempted break-in at her flat. One of my staff had a brick through her window. We had bottles thrown into the yard, and all because of the prayer situation. It's not right that a head teacher or teachers should be put under that kind of stress because they're just trying to do their jobs.
A breaking story in the last few minutes, and the regulator Ofcom has said that cutting Royal Mail's 6-day-a-week letter deliveries to 5 days or even 3 are among options that could be considered, as it warned the Universal Postal Service risks becoming unsustainable without reform. We'll have more on that throughout the programme.
Let's get back to this lead political story today. Senior Conservative MP Sir Simon Clarke's call for Rishi Sunak to be replaced, or the Conservative Party will face a massacre in any general election. Let's go to Olivia Utley, live from Westminster this morning, to tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, Simon Clarke calling for the Prime Minister to quit last night was a real headache for the PM. We were expecting something like this to happen after that devastating poll in the Telegraph last week showed that the Conservatives would go down to just 169 seats. That's only 4 more than they had under John Major in 1997 if there were to be an election today. That got whispers flying within the party, and sure enough, Simon Simon Clarke. He was one of the 11 rebels on Rwanda last week, close ally of Liz Truss's. And perhaps most damagingly, he was number 2 to Rishi Sunak at the Treasury when Rishi was Chancellor. He was Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He's written a piece in The Telegraph today saying that although Rishi Sunak isn't solely responsible for the problems that the Conservatives find themselves with, his uninspiring leadership is an obstacle to recovery. Those are pretty stark words from a one-time very close colleague of Rishi Sunak's. The rebellion didn't kind of take off as some were predicting last night. And actually, if anything, senior Tories rode in behind the Prime Minister. Priti Patel, who's hardly Rishi Sunak's biggest fan, the former Home Secretary, said that now isn't the time to change leader. And most Conservative MPs were saying similar all over social media. But of course, this dent to Rishi Sunak's leadership, another dent to his leadership, just as he's trying to force this controversial Rwanda legislation through Parliament, does not look good. And if that row we saw in Westminster last week with rebels on Rwanda almost voting down the legislation at third reading was difficult enough for Sunak, if that weakened his authority, then this weakens his authority a whole lot more. Things just get harder and harder for the Prime Minister heading into this election.
The Business Minister, Kevin Hollinrake, he's been on the airwaves this morning. He's been saying that Sir Simon Clarke's call for a new leader caused some panic behind the scenes last night, which I'm sure is, to say the least. Yeah, lots of views from you this morning. Thanks for getting in touch. Stephen Cleethorpe says, as a party member and voter, I too am holding my head in my hands. To suggest changing the party's leader now is absolute madness. But Ian in Wellingborough says, Simon Clarke is spot on. Sunak out or Tories gone. Where do you stand on this debate? Let us know this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com.
I ended up watching by accident Yes Prime Minister last night on BBC 4, and very, very funny, very, very good, very clever, very, very good acting in all of that. You couldn't make it up. But they did.
Or could you?
Yeah, Alex Deakin, that weather picture, well, it's settling down a bit, but it's not looking good. Alex.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Still very windy out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn is clearing away today. Bright and blustery for most. As I say, there are still warnings in place, particularly gusty over northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland through the morning time. Still a potential for further disruption. And then the winds will steadily ease a bit this afternoon, but it stays blustery. We'll see cloud and patchy rain for South Wales, southwest England. Plenty of showers coming into western Scotland, but many central and eastern areas will be dry and bright with some sunny spells. Feels a bit fresher than yesterday. Temperatures, though, still 9 to 11 Celsius, a touch above average for this time of the year. Through this evening, we'll continue to see showers coming into Scotland. So the winds will continue to ease. In the south, we are looking at thickening cloud and some outbreaks of rain trickling more widely over southern England and South Wales. And some of that rain will head towards Northern Ireland by dawn. Chilly one across Scotland, a hint of blue there, so some pockets of frost are possible. Most towns and cities start Thursday at 4 or 5 Celsius. Starting dull and damp across the Midlands, North Wales and Northern Ireland. Tomorrow that rain will spread steadily into parts of Scotland, northeast England also. Turns a little drier further south, but staying pretty grey, I suspect, and cloudy. And the winds will start to pick up once more. Nothing as lively as today, but the breeze will pick up. And tomorrow will be a milder day, double digits across the board.
Cheers, Alex. Still to come, former singer and convicted paedophile Gary Glitter faces his parole hearing today. We'll be telling you all about that next.
This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A parole hearing for the disgraced former singer Gary Glitter is to be held later today at the jail where he's serving 16 years for sexually abusing 3 children.
Let's cross to our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody, and a warning: his report contains flashing images.
Today's hearing will take place behind closed doors to avoid identifying children who may have been victims of the glam rock singer Gary Glitter. This isn't the first time he's been up for parole. In February last year, the singer, whose real name is Paul Gadd, was released on parole from HMP Verne in Portland, Dorset, having completed half of a 16-year sentence for sexually abusing girls. But less than 6 weeks later, he was returned to prison after breaching his licence conditions. He was allegedly viewing downloaded images of children. Glitter's fall from grace began in the late 1990s when he was jailed for possessing thousands of images of child abuse. In 2002, he was expelled from Cambodia amid reports of sex crime allegations. And in March 2006, he was convicted of sexually abusing 2 girls aged 10 and 11 in Vietnam and spent 2.5 years in jail. In May 2014, Gadd returned to the UK, where he faced charges under Operation U-Tree, the Metropolitan Police investigation launched in the wake of the Jimmy Savile scandal. He was arrested, put on trial, and found guilty of sexually abusing 3 girls between 1975 and 1980. But his victims say he's shown no remorse for the attacks. One of the women is suing Paul Gadd. Lawyers for the woman, who was abused by Glitter when she was 12 years old, have told the parole board that he shows contempt for his victims. It said he's refused to cooperate and has ignored court orders, deliberately making the process more stressful and traumatic, say his victims. Today, the parole board will consider the likelihood Gad will reoffend, as well as looking at his behaviour and attitude in prison. Only then will they decide if the 79-year-old will walk free or spend the rest of his life behind bars. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Can he ever be rehabilitated? Founder of Freedom from Abuse, Marilyn Hawes, on this morning. Marilyn, what do you think? He's an elderly man. Could he be reformed? Should he be forgiven?
Well, it's very difficult for the victims to forgive, isn't it? Because it's impacted their life forever. And you can never forget, even if you do forgive, you can never forget what happened to you. I don't think he can reform. Look at his track record. I mean, you've only got to look at his childhood as well, because it goes back to the early years again. That brokenness, you've heard me say it before. He never knew his father. He had an unmarried mother. He was brought up with the mother and the grandmother. Then at age 10, he and his brother were put into a care home. Now, that would have been in 1954 when care homes were not very good, and they can be difficult even now. And I suspect even then he was up to these tricks. He shows no remorse. They never do. He's arrogant. Yes, they are. They know how to play the system. He will have been probably behaved in prison. He's had no temptation. The thing is, what about the human rights of the victims, the human rights of the children that are still out there unharmed yet by him? And what you can't do, even though he's going to be 80 this year, and even though, he's an elderly man, you can't switch off the fantasy in the brain. Even last year, the age he was then, he was still at it. You know, he'll still have contacts out there, and I can't believe for a moment that he's going to reform. It's far too late. He could have done it was earlier, maybe, and if he'd wanted to, but he hasn't wanted to, has he? So I think he's a great risk still, and if it's a risk, it's a risk, and he shouldn't come out.
What will the parole board specifically be considering? Not just his record in prison, but presumably things like the risk of reoffending, the risk of harm to the public. What are your views on that?
Well, that's what they're looking at. That's one of the things they look at is this person, whatever the prisoner has done, whoever, are these people still a risk to the public? Yes, he is. And yes, he always will be. And yes, he should fulfill the 16-year sentence and beyond and never come out of prison. A risk is a risk. I'm on the side of innocent children who are going to be plagued by him and looking at filthy images. I mean, 2013, I think it was. He was in tears. I would never look at these vile images. They lie. They lie and they're plausible and they know exactly how to play the system. He's probably maybe like I've been in prisons where the chaplains will say, they always know when they're coming out on parole. They go into chapel every Sunday. They want the Bible. And so it goes on. They play the system. And people that don't know how to read these people are taken in by it. And even parole boards get taken in. I really seriously hope he is never coming out on the civvy street.
Marilyn, enough said. Thank you very much indeed. Marilyn is the founder of Freedom from Abuse. Thank you very much indeed. Of all the crimes that can be committed, crimes against children, violation of children has just really got to be
I 100% agree. Yeah, and that's not borne out in sentencing. In fact, it's probably quite the other way.
Yeah, and how it affects, formulates, just ruins children's lives and their perceptions as they go into adulthood and their trust factors and all sorts of things like that just cannot be underestimated at all.
Awful.
Right.
Who's not awful and who's going to cheer us up after that depressing segment is the lovely Paul Coit. What have you got for us?
Got a bit of poor Middlesbrough, 1-0 up. but anyway, Chelsea fans would be very happy because Chelsea scored 6. I remember speaking to Kyle Walker quite a few years ago when he was playing for Spurs, and he said when Pochettino came in, I remember him saying, you know what, it just doesn't seem to click at the moment. We just can't seem to get it. Hopefully it will. And it's the same thing happening at Chelsea. Takes a while under Pochettino, and then when things click, things will be fine. And I think things will be fine at Chelsea. So they're into the Carabao Cup final. They will play the winner of either Liverpool or Fulham. Liverpool currently 1-up, and it's at Craven Cottage tonight. So whoever wins that.
Fulham are 1-up?
Yeah. No, Liverpool are. Liverpool are 1-up. Yeah, so Liverpool go
Okay, well, whatever. It's going to be a very interesting final.
I think it will be a very interesting final. Talk about very interesting in India at the moment. England are over there playing at Hyderabad. They're playing over in India, and it's a very, very difficult test to play. 5 tests they're going to play over there. Basically, these days, the more the years go on, if you play in someone else's country, the pitches are all looked after, so all the odds are going to be against you. India have won the last 16 there, so it's going to be very tricky. So they play there today, but also there's another problem tomorrow, but Shoaib Bashir. Now, Shoaib Bashir is a 20-year-old spin bowler. Spin is very important playing over in India, so he's very important to the England team. But what's happened is that because he is of Pakistani heritage, he's born in Surrey, England player, should have been sorted, there shouldn't have been any problem, but as far as visas are concerned, so it's all affected him going into India. So they were in the United Arab Emirates, then he wasn't allowed to fly into India, so it was thought, OK, we'll try and sort this visa problem out. He's now got to go back to the Indian High Commission in London to try and sort this out. Why this is taking so much time? It really shouldn't happen.
Just because of his Pakistani heritage?
Totally.
And he's got a full British passport?
He's got a full British passport. And it said, and there's been other players, Khawaja from Australia had a similar problem as well, that it should be sorted, and this will then turn into an international incident. This has nothing to do with sport. This is something else. And for a young player like that, who's an English player, it should have been sorted, and they've had about 12 weeks to get this sorted, and it's all left right.
And even the Indian cricket captain coming out this morning expressing his sympathy, saying, you know, I'm so sorry for
How
the guy.
can you not? How can you not have sympathy? Because there's nothing done wrong. So anyway, 5 tests. It's going to be a terrific series over in India, and let's hope that he gets over to play. Not time for the first one, but maybe for the second one.
Fingers crossed.
While people have been sleeping, the Australian Tennis Open.
Yes.
What's going on?
Now, Diana Yastremska from Ukraine. Basically, she is the first qualifier to reach the Australian Open. It's like we had with Emma Raducanu. She was a qualifier when she won the US Open. Although Yastremska's 23 years old, she has qualified, first qualifier to reach the semi-final. There she is, since 1978. Nadine Dorries was the last one. Anyway, she beat Linda Noskova. She's already beat Vondarusa. She's beaten Azarenka. So who knows how far she can go. So there she is today.
Ukraine to have some success. I can't help but support all the Ukrainians in these tournaments.
Yeah.
What nationality did she defeat?
Czech. Linda Noskova was Czech. So,
go.
yeah, so it wasn't Russian. I know where you were going.
Know
where you were going on that one.
It sounded kind of Russian.
Absolutely. And also, I should really mention Novak Djokovic as well. Novak continues to win. He's already won 10 Australian Opens. He's now into the semi-final, so going for his 11th. Every time he's got to the semi-final, he's ended up winning. Yeah. But he was in an interview with Nick Kyrgios. I know you're not a fan of Nick's.
Not really.
But Nick is doing great interviews. He's doing work over there. And he spoke to Novak. This is what happened. This is pretty funny.
Why is he not playing?
Because injured.
Oh, right, OK.
You do.
Right, have a listen to this.
Can you just show me which tree that is? Because I need to get healthy, because I'm sick of you winning on this court. And I just want to come back maybe once and beat you one time. Yeah. Show me the tree. Where's the tree?
OK, I'll show you the tree, but you can't tell anyone. It's a big secret. So what you got to do is take off your shoes, climb the tree, the highest point, and hang upside down on one of the highest branches for 33 minutes and 3 seconds. And you're going to win a slam.
That's the way you do Nick Kyrgios. So when you're dealing with Kyrgios and he's going, oh, mate, so tell me about... So Novak Djokovic, you know, I've never been the biggest fan, but I'm warming to him after that one.
Yeah, and, you know, I love that about tennis, is that they can really... I mean, Nick Kyrgios is the exception, but he's being charming there, is that they are always very polite about each other. It's really sweet. They have these really massive, gargantuan battles on the tennis court, and then afterwards they say, he's a brilliant player and I admire him so much, and it's lovely.
Yeah, the way Jimmy Connors...
I love a bit of needle, though. I love a bit of needle.
They're always so polite to each other. I don't know what sport she watches or where she sees.
Well, your tennis expertise is, you know, limited.
I know it's, you know, there's niceness, but I like a little bit of needle. You know, you like a little bit.
Well, that's Kyrgios all the way.
I don't think Connors and McEnroe still talk after all these years. I still think there's problems there.
No, I agree with you, but what do I know, as I've just been told. Yesterday I was called insufferable, which...
You weren't, were you really?
Insufferable, all over all the newspapers.
Oh,
Eamonn's co-host brands him insufferable.
I didn't see that. Did I?
You didn't, Isabel. In fairness to you, said I was an insufferable workaholic.
Oh, right.
Yes, but they just cut it
I don't think I did even use that phrase, insufferable workaholic.
Well, that's what they've quoted. But anyway,
I didn't see
the headline is just that I'm insufferable.
Can I just say that I think you're sufferable?
Thank you so much.
I am
You're more than welcome.
you.
Very kind.
Very gladly.
But you wouldn't like to play us as tennis players or any other golfers or anything else, because we wouldn't be nice to each other.
No, we wouldn't be. No, it'd be horrible.
We'd enjoy it. It would be great.
I miss a shot, then the club goes flying into the river, and then that's the end of it, and I'll storm off in a huff.
I'd be the Roy Keane of, whatever it was I was playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's very entertaining. You see the podcast that they do, Gary Neville, Ian Wright and Roy Keane, very, very entertaining. Still to come, Nigel Nelson, Claire Purcell are back, very entertaining, and they're even married. Incredible. So there'll be the big stories making the papers today right after this.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put in your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the middle of all this doom and gloom and what's reflected in the papers and what's making the headlines and what people like us are purveying to you, we're carrying to you all this doom and gloom this morning. But try not to take it too seriously. Claire Purcell and GB News senior political commentator, Mr. Nigel Nelson. I do think I have to keep mentioning that you two are romantically entwined because I just could not... It's interesting. There's never a sort of tension between them or anything
Despite
like that.
political differences as well, you know.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see in this day and age.
Wonderful to see.
Right, where should we start? Nigel, should we start with you? British Gas is making a huge profit.
800 million, yes.
No
so I think they need some more money. What?
They should increase bills. I know what would help them.
Yes.
Well, they're certainly getting it. The 800 million is
that's nearly £1 billion.
Nearly £1 billion. That compares to 72 million in 2022. And this is British Gas parent company Centrica that makes the money. Largely, it's clawing back sort of money from customers who owe them stuff, but it's still profit. These are public services. So, I mean, my view politically, Claire will disagree with me on this, is that public services should be in public control. And there shouldn't be a profit motive. The whole thing is they should provide the service.
Should be a service. The clue's in the title.
Yes.
Service.
Yes.
Like the postal service.
Exactly.
The police service.
Yes.
The prison service.
All in public control.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And so with the idea that this money goes into the hands of shareholders when it really should be going into providing providing something for customers. So if this money would actually take the bill down, that'd be great. I mean, in fairness to Centrica's boss, Chris O'Shea, he says even his £4.5 million annual salary can't be justified. Well, if that can't be justified, perhaps he'd have a look at his profits and say, what, can that be justified?
Well, Claire, as he said, you will disagree with some of that?
I do indeed, and I think if we're going to talk about nationalising and publicly owned services, then the post office, which is publicly owned, isn't a really good example, is it? Look at the problems that we've just gone through with the post office and bad behaviour. So just making it a publicly owned, making it nationalised doesn't take away those issues. So I'm not going to sit here and say that 800 million is in any way reasonable and bosses taking enormous salaries when people are suffering. I can't, in all wholeheartedness, support that. But I don't support nationalisation. I think that will lead to no investment going back into new technology. It is not going to make problems of gas and electricity expenditure go away. And I think it makes it worse. I think you need that competition in the market. Free market conservatism right here. But I do think that we need to start looking at bonuses and enormous salaries for when the rest of the country is suffering. There are people that can't afford to put a radiator or a heater on. They have no hot water because they can't afford their bills, and you see somebody raking it in. I think that we need to sort of start looking at that, especially when they don't fix leaks. They don't put more money into making certain things better in rural areas.
Correct, because it's a service and that's what they should be doing. And you said basically that the post office is in public ownership and therefore that doesn't affect the situation they're in. That's because they apply private criteria to what should be a public service. So it's like it's an unfair playing field, really.
Yes, that's right. Well, I mean, what they were doing, and because of the post office scandal, they were trying to claw money back. And we still don't know quite where that money's gone. So I agree that just because you've got an industry in public control, it doesn't make it a great industry. What it does do is say, look, we're not here to make a profit. We're here to actually
provide the service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about life expectancy, Claire. Perhaps unsurprisingly, it's also on the front of The Guardian. They're saying the longer you stay in education, the longer your life will be.
Yeah, and I don't think this will come as any surprise, and there'll be children out there who won't like this message whatsoever. But the study that was undertaken looks at life expectancy for children who complete primary, secondary and tertiary education, and have seen an increase. It cuts the risk of death by 2% per year. Now, I think that probably when you start to think about it is quite obvious. The more educated you are, the better your soft social skills become. You're looking at risk and reward, dietary concerns, perhaps where you might move for a job. So there are lots of things involved in this. It isn't just education. It is all of the other things, social skills, learning to be friends, learning to fall out with friends. It's all of those kind of things. I just think it's quite an interesting way of looking at it when there was a debate in Parliament yesterday looking at absenteeism in schools. And it's the one thing that we'd always, and you'll be the same with your children, you must go to school, you have to go to school. But I think the pandemic has also shone a light on the fact that...
The missing generation.
Yeah, there is a missing generation.
Claire, I honestly pinch myself sometimes because school was tough for me. School, well, it was tough. It was, you know, it was hard academically. It was hard and whatever. But the happiest years of my life, I've never once. I mean, yes, there's times you wake up and think, oh, I can't be bothered going in here today, or you would pull a sickie or something like that. But never did I have a fear. Oh my God, it's school today. I've got to go. And I'm very thankful because that seems to be prevalent with so many kids, especially
well, something like this might actually cut down truancy. I mean, if you're actually telling kids that, provided you go to school, you could actually put 70 days a year on your life. And that's quite a good advert for saying,
especially
hey...
the older you get.
Yes, exactly.
Can we go back to school?
Perhaps we should all go back to school,
I
yes.
wanted to go back to school. I enjoyed it when I was there. I'd enjoy it again now.
I did go back to school with you, didn't I?
Oh, yeah, you did. We gave a speech at my old school together. Was that a speech or was like I don't know what, sort of workshop?
I think it bored them all to tears anyway.
Speak for yourself.
Whatever it was. Now, let's talk about sitcoms. I think it's very, very important. Last night I watched the whole episode, found it by accident on BBC4, Yes, Prime Minister, and it was just... It's different class. However, you will have noticed on your TV that some TV executives have decided there's no market for sitcoms, you don't do them, or they're not of interest.
Politically incorrect now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not of interest to older people and whatever it is. But, so I spend all my time watching TV Gold, which Dad's Army, Fools and Horses are on there. One Foot in the Grave. What's the other one? Hyacinth Bucket Bouquet.
Keeping Up Appearances.
Yeah. You know, all these things.
Hello.
They're all very, very good. What happened to them, Claire?
They're deemed to not be popular, which I think flies in the face exactly what you've just said. And we're the same. Nigel and I spend a lot of our time sort of binging through box sets of old sitcoms, whether they be American sitcoms or whether they be British. You've got Fawlty Towers, Only Fools and Horses, The Royal Family, and then things like The Big Bang Theory, which was kind of a go-to for us if you didn't know what to watch. But it seems that they've, I don't know if they've fallen out of favour because everybody now feels the need to be a bit more politically correct. You couldn't do quite a lot of the old, like, hello, I don't think you could ever produce that.
Or they're just being ditched in favour of the Billions and the Succession and the Yellowstone and these big box sets that are kind of... So many of them, they're all consuming. There's almost no time.
But then the thing
you
is,
don't get a laugh from any of those.
Reality series. I mean, we were looking through the TV guide a couple of nights ago, and there was endless kind of police series on, and not dramas. These were reality. Yeah. Well, these were reality sort of
999.
That kind of stuff. And you're sort of thinking, I mean, the police must spend more time acting than they actually do going out there sort of solving crime.
Yes.
But at the moment, I think that the only long-running sitcom on British television I can remember is not going out, which is very good.
Yes.
Why are there not more of those?
Is that Lee Mack?
Yeah, that's right. That's Lee Mack. Yeah.
Right, let's talk about drinking games. This is in the Times today. The so-called neck nomination, where people drink a pint and then pass on the nomination. Is this what are the Times saying about it all?
Well, this started out from the Wetherspoons drinking game, which was if you use the app, you can send people a pint. If you go onto the app, you can find which Wetherspoons pub they're in, what table, and you can deliver a pint. And it started off as a sort of random act of kindness for people. But, of course, as all of these things do, online sort of challenges come into it. And it became necking a pint and you have to show... the evidence of doing it online, and then you pass on the nomination, and then somebody is deemed to be the winner. Now, we all can see that was going to not work because it's irresponsible. Let's put the disclaimer out there to start drinking heavily and necking pints. And I think it's probably one of those things that started between a small group of friends, but people have died by doing this with the alcohol intake. So what started off as a sort of random act of kindness and was quite sweet, and there was a whole Facebook page set up showing, Gran and Granny that were out for an evening and they were sent a glass of wine or a pint of bitter or whatever it was, and that was lovely. But, of course, we take things too far. And you start bringing drinking competitions into it, I think it needs to be sort of wound up, and I think Wetherspoons really need to step in a little bit and start behaving a bit better.
In the minute that's left to us, Nigel, we're talking about sweet and bitterness there. Our perception of bitterness, tea with what added to it?
Salt.
Why?
Well, according to the Americans are now telling us how to make a cup of tea, but according to an American professor, Michelle Franke, she's saying that if you add a bit of salt, it takes the bitterness out. You won't taste the salt. Also, some warm milk should go in there. That'll actually make your tea an awful lot better. It just seems strange that America, where all the tea I've had in America has been absolutely foul.
Yeah.
So the fact that they've now got a professor telling us how to do it, not bad going.
I think anyone who's accidentally added salt to their tea at the breakfast table or whatever may well disagree with that analysis there. Claire and Nigel,
thank you.
Going to be back in 45 minutes' time. Right now, let's get the weather picture. Good morning, Alex.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Still very windy out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn is clearing away today. Bright and blustery for most. As I say, there are still warnings in place, particularly gusty over northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland through the morning time. Still a potential for further disruption. And then the winds will steadily ease a bit this afternoon, but it stays blustery. We'll see cloud and patchy rain for South Wales, southwest England. Plenty of showers coming into western Scotland, but many central and eastern areas will be dry and bright with some sunny spells. Feels a bit fresher than yesterday. Temperatures, though, still 9 to 11 Celsius, a touch above average for this time of the year. Through this evening, we'll continue to see showers coming into Scotland. The winds will continue to ease. In the south, we are looking at thickening cloud and some outbreaks of rain trickling more widely over southern England and South Wales. And some of that rain will head towards Northern Ireland by dawn. Chilly one across Scotland, a hint of blue there, so some pockets of frost are possible. Most towns and cities start Thursday at 4 or 5 Celsius. Starting dull and damp across the Midlands, North Wales and Northern Ireland. Tomorrow that rain will spread steadily into parts of Scotland, northeast England also. Turns a little drier further south, but staying pretty grey, I suspect, and cloudy. And the winds will start to pick up once more. Nothing as lively as today, but the breeze will pick up. And tomorrow will be a milder day, double digits across the board.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Eight o'clock, Wednesday, the 24th of January, which reminds me it's my younger brother's birthday.
Ah.
Well, I've got three younger brothers, but he's a year younger than me, although he'll lie and pretend he's much older, younger than that.
And it's my daughter's birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday to all the family.
Aquarians.
Oh, is she? Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster leading the news this morning.
Pressure on the Prime Minister as he faces calls to resign following a scathing attack from former Cabinet Minister Sir Simon Clarke. We'll be speaking to former Minister Nadine Dorries for her reaction later in the hour.
Donald Trump sailed to victory in New Hampshire last night, beating rival Nikki Haley. Is a Trump v Biden rematch now inevitable?
Storm Jocelyn will continue to cause chaos with your commute this morning after another night of strong winds and heavy rains. Alex Deacon will have your forecast throughout the morning.
Very windy again out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn will clear away through the day today and the winds will slowly be easing. Bright and blustery with sunshine and a few showers. A full forecast coming up later.
Alex, new research suggests banning disposable vapes would protect children, but adults may need e-cigarettes to prevent them going back to smoking. Right, what's your view on this one? Vapes, should they be banned? We'll be debating that very shortly.
And Paul Coyte's here with all your sport.
You know, I take the sport very seriously, and I was a little upset an hour ago when there were sniggers when I used the words spank and thrash when I was doing the football. So that's not going to happen now, is it? I just want to say
Childish.
that I thought it was childish as well. Chelsea gave Middlesbrough a good seeing to last night when they won 6-1 at Stamford Bridge, and they will be playing the winner of Fulham and Liverpool, who play tonight.
Liverpool holding the one-goal advantage.
They are indeed, yes.
OK, you can join in any of our discussions, which is what you've been doing,
Yes, it's been very good. This one from Mary. Your hair is lovely today. That style really suits you. Not sure if she's talking about Paul or you, Eamonn. Both looking great.
Thanks.
Lots of you also talking about this Tory leadership attack from Sir Simon Clarke. Jeremy in Stafford says, if the Tories dispose of Rishi Sunak now, the pressure to hold an immediate general election would make it inevitable. Who on earth would want to be Prime Minister for 5 minutes? Jim in the Highlands says the only person who can save the Tories from election annihilation is Bojo.
Well, Liz Truss was Prime Minister for 5 minutes, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been a few of them.
Yeah.
It's 2019. Do we want another?
Run the sting. There's a man called Simon Clarke. He's a senior Tory MP. He's the Sir Simon Clarke, in case you're wondering who he is. And he's called for Rishi Sunak to be replaced or If that doesn't happen, the Conservative Party will face a massacre, he says, in any general election.
Yeah, he's written for The Telegraph today, and he was Cabinet Secretary under Liz Truss, but he's also number 2 under Rishi Sunak in the Treasury when Sunak was Chancellor. He says the Prime Minister is leading the party to extinction.
He also accused the Prime Minister of not getting what Britain needs or listening to exactly what the British people want. Let's get the views now of political correspondent Olivia Utley. Apparently when this came to light last night that this was going to be in the Telegraph today, there was a lot of consternation within Number 10.
There was a lot of consternation in Number 10. There were lots of rumblings in Westminster. But to be honest, in the end, it felt like a little bit of an anticlimax. So Simon Clarke is a relatively senior Conservative MP. He was Chief Secretary to the Treasury under Rishi Sunak, actually, and he's a close ally of Liz Truss. But what Number 10 seemed to be worried about is that a number of MPs would row in behind Simon Clarke and call for Rishi Sunak's resignation as well. As of yet, that hasn't really happened. And actually, all sorts of unlikely people are weighing in behind the Prime Minister and saying that Simon Clarke is wrong to be sowing the seeds of division when the Conservatives are already in so much trouble. Priti Patel, who is no friend of Rishi Sunak's, tweeted saying that now is not the moment to get rid of the Prime Minister. And Liz Truss herself actually said that she was not behind Simon Clarke's call for the Prime Minister to stand down. Until now, we only knew of one Conservative MP who had actually written a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister to Sir Graham Brady, the head of the 1922 committee, and that was Andrea Jenkins. Well, she now has a friend in Simon Clarke, but it doesn't look as though a leadership challenge soon is likely at all. Everyone I've spoken to says that the rebels just don't have the numbers. That said, it's not good news for the Prime Minister. He had a very bruising week last week when he was struggling to get the Rwanda legislation over the line in the House of Commons. He did succeed in the end. The rebellion that we'd all been talking about sort of withered away to almost nothing. But it was an ugly day in the House of Commons, and it exposed to the general public, or at least the general public who follow these things, that there are lots of divisions within the Conservative Party. The fact that a senior Conservative MP has now called for Rishi Sunak's resignation does undermine the Prime Minister at a time that he's not doing very well at all. A poll for The Telegraph last week showed that if there was to be a general election tomorrow, the Tories would be down to 169 seats, which is only 4 more than they had under John Major. And actually, a new poll for The Telegraph today, a little bit of a fanciful poll, I would say, but it asked people whether they would prefer Keir Starmer or a new Conservative leader who put Conservative principles at their core. And the second option was by far the most popular. This imaginary Conservative leader would win by a landslide. I'm not sure how Rishi Sunak feels about that.
Okay, Olivia, thank you very much indeed for the perspective there. To the United States, Donald Trump has won the New Hampshire Republican presidential primary. He beat former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley.
So it is Trump's second victory after winning the Iowa caucus last week, and it cemented his position, really, as the front-runner. Here's what Trump had to say overnight.
You know, we won New Hampshire 3 times now, 3. We win it every time. We win the primary, we win the generals, we've won it, and it's a very, very special place to me. It's very important.
Very important, very special. To tell us how important and how special, Ray Addison, the GB News reporter here, and former advisor to the Bank of England, Roger Gewolb. Thanks, nice to see you both here. Ray, how special was Iowa to? It wasn't Iowa, or was it last night? New Hampshire.
Yeah, it was a big result, and Donald Trump is absolutely furious that Nikki Haley has not followed the script as he would like her to do it and concede. She came up pretty quick, within about an hour of the polls closing. About 20% of the vote had been counted at that stage, and Trump was ahead. And you know, she sort of suddenly came on stage and started to make a speech. People thought, oh no, she's gonna step out.
But she didn't.
No, she wants to fight on, and she's doubling down. You know, and she.
But to what purpose, Ray? I mean, she's going nowhere really.
Well, I mean, Some people believe that. However, she didn't lose as convincingly as some might say. I think still all the votes need to be counted, but Trump's on about 55% of the vote. She's on about 43%. OK, it's double figures. But I think some people thought that she was going to really, really struggle. She has picked up 8 delegates from this as well versus Trump's 11. So if you look at it in terms of just purely in terms of delegates, that's not too bad.
But I suppose New Hampshire is a bit of an odd one when it comes to the primaries compared to some of the others. It usually is a bit more liberal, open-minded, a few more independent voters. And she was always going to do well if she was going to do anywhere in New Hampshire. The question is what's going to happen on Super Tuesday. But the extra complication on Super Tuesday is just days before President Trump's in court for one of his many indictments, and that will not play well to the sort of ultra-conservative wing of the Republicans, will it?
Definitely. It's scheduled to be in court just the day before Super Tuesday. 16 states up for grabs, but South Carolina first in about a month. If she wins South Carolina, although Trump is still polling ahead of her, that could be a big difference. And all of these court cases, anything could happen in terms of, obviously there's about 10% of the party that are currently voting for Trump that would say they would turn against him if he was to get any convictions. There's not going to be any convictions before Super Tuesday, but in terms of the evidence that starts coming out, we know that anything could happen at any time.
Roger, how does the Democratic Party choose their candidate? Is the same process as we're seeing here with the Republicans? And I suppose what I'm getting at is who eventually is going to stand up and say, Joe, let's not bother with this?
It's a point that you get credit for. You've made it a few times when you've said, why am I not seeing somebody besides old Joe if he, God forbid, fell down the stairs or just forgot what was going, or forgot, or forgot what was going on. There's nobody there, as you have pointed out. Now, the thing is, it's funny that so many people have tried to get Trump, pardon me, kicked off the ballot in New Hampshire, Minnesota, all these different states, and yet old Joe managed to get himself kicked off the ballot in New Hampshire. Basically, New Hampshire law says they have to hold the first primary. Joe and the Democratic National Committee insisted that that go to South Carolina. New Hampshire wasn't wearing it. Therefore, it broke the regulations of the Democratic Committee. Therefore, Biden wasn't on the ballot. So a huge movement of Democrats wrote him in, and he won. So where does that leave Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson, the two contenders, if they can't even win in a primary election where the winner wasn't even on the ballot? What chance have they got?
Can I ask you this? I mean, it looks as though the writing's on the wall now that Trump will get the Republican nomination. Does that mean, though, do you think, that he will win the election? Because, I mean, we're hearing people like Amy Dorries, we spoke to earlier in the programme, a Republican herself. She just simply can't vote for him. Yesterday on the channel, we had the mooch on, Anthony Scaramucci. Now, there's no love lost between those two. We know the story there. But he's saying he would vote for Biden ahead of Trump.
Well, I mean, a lot of people that you would think would support Trump say they would vote for Biden. I don't know. As I say to them, I really don't get it. You support this, you support that, and then you're going to go vote for Biden. Why would you do that? But I think the real issue is I would be saying to you today that I'm going to make a prediction that Nikki Haley is going to drop out before the South Carolina primary.
Really?
But for the fact of these trials. And I would say that because if you were a donor with a checkbook, would you be writing checks today to back this candidate? I don't think so. But I think she, and probably she can convince her donors to wait and see if anything happens at that hearing the day before. But the thing is this, as I've said many times, these are criminal charges. They have to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. There is enough evidence floating around that exactly like the Horizon post office scandal, those voting machines had some questions around them, other issues, etc. I don't think a jury can I think this is all a stage show to disable Trump. I don't think those juries, unless they are in a major big Democratic city with a jury that's not impartial, is going to be able to convict him of anything.
It's going to be fascinating and absolutely mind-blowing to us over here how the role of the judiciary and all of this comes into it. Really interesting to talk to you, Roger, and thanks for that as well, Ray Addison.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories making the news on this Wednesday morning. The public could face being called up to fight for the British military because our forces are just too small. That's a warning from General Sir Patrick Saunders, who in a speech later today is set to stress the need for the government to mobilise the nation in the event of war with Russia. According to reports this morning, General Sir Patrick is also expected to critique cuts to the army, which has been reduced to its smallest size in centuries.
The woman known as Britain's strictest head teacher, Catherine Birbalsingh, has revealed the shocking abuse that she and her staff have received after deciding to ban a prayer room at her school. The Michaela Academy is currently facing a court challenge which alleges the no prayer policy introduced is discriminatory. She sat down with Patrick Christys last night.
My staff had an attempted break-in at her flat. One of my staff had a brick through her window. We had bottles thrown into the yard. And all because of the prayer situation. It's not right that a head teacher or teachers should be put under that kind of stress because they're just trying to do their jobs.
In the last hour, the regulator Ofcom has said cutting Royal Mail's 6-day-a-week letter deliveries to 5 days or even 3 are among options that could be considered, as it warned the Universal Postal Service risks becoming unsustainable without reform.
So you see people sucking away on those vapes. What do they do with them afterwards if they are disposable? We're debating that next.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
18 minutes past the hour. You're very welcome, Eamonn and Isabel, here at breakfast on GB News.
And we're going to talk about abortion now, and specifically the legislation that is designed to protect women from protesters outside clinics. It's likely to be watered down by the Home Secretary.
Under draft guidance, campaigners can approach women attending clinics like that, conduct silent prayer and engage in discussion with patients. This within the 150-metre wide safe access zones.
Well, let's discuss all of this with Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton, Rupa Hook, a long-time campaigner on this particular issue. Just to explain where we are with the law, because there have been big changes to the right to protest in this country under the Conservatives, and that has had implications, hasn't it, on these abortion clinics. And you want to make sure that these sort of safe access zones are protected, and there's been a public consultation into that, and that closed on Monday night. What do you want to see as a result of that?
Well, basically, this has been a long-running issue in my area in Ealing. We've got an abortion clinic there, and women were not able to get in the front door because there were people outside. They claim that they're praying or informing. They've got these leaflets, so they wouldn't call it protest. Anyway, in Ealing, we had a local order that moved them away 150 metres away from the clinic gates, and then fast forward to, so that was 2018, I think, but it's only a temporary order that has to be renewed every 3 years. So that's up for renewal. Shouldn't have to be renewed, because in 2022, the Public Order Act of Suella Braverman, we inserted an amendment in there. MPs massively voted to protect women using abortion clinics, and maybe not just the end users, but the medical staff, the practitioners as well, that they should be able to get in the door without people in their face. However, this was 2022, nothing was happening for a while. I kept jumping up and asking what happened to that thing we all voted for. It was massively backed by, I think, 3-1, 299 votes to 110. In my rounding process, that's nearly 3-1. Anyway, the point is, they've managed to do a consultation. There should be no need. If we voted for it, it's the law, it's in the Public Order Act. And it pretty much reverses everything MPs voted for. And that consultation closed at midnight on Monday. I don't personally blame James Cleverly. I think he was dealt a bad hand by his predecessor. But, I mean, it is a worry that,
Well, James Cleverly has said that women who want to go, which is their legal right for an abortion in this country, should be able to do so safely. But there was also on the government website, that I looked at it last night, they said that during the passage of the legislation, there was firmly held debate which showed the opposing views, and that was why they felt it was necessary to carry out this public consultation. And this will be people, conservative Christians, I suppose, who have very, very strong feelings about this. What would their arguments be? You know, I did a documentary in my past about abortion, and I went to an abortion clinic in the East End of London, and there were nuns there regularly who would be praying, and the staff also had objected to this, as well as a number of the users of the clinic.
Well, they objected to the nuns.
They objected to the nuns. So a lot of people say harmless nuns. They believe that, you know, life is precious. This is such a controversial topic. Surely that's OK. You would disagree?
The pressure, whether it's spoken or unspoken, around the physical presence of being there.
Eamonn put it very well. I mean, again, if you imagine that the reason for the woman wanting this procedure, which has been legal since 2017, might be rape, incest, fatal fetal abnormality, which means that the baby's going to kill the mother and the baby will die too. So there may be any number of reasons.
Which you don't want to sit and discuss or stand and discuss on the pavement.
Yeah, exactly. Any other medical procedure you'd have in complete anonymity. You wouldn't be shamed on your way in to have it.
So why have the Conservatives given in to this?
I mean, to be honest, MPs voted for it by 3-1. We shouldn't be having this argument at all. Why is the government trying to undermine the will of Parliament? I mean, who knows what happened? Maybe some of those... And they're often funded by America. We've seen what's going on over the Atlantic. They're very well endowed. These anti-choice people... Maybe those people have got to them. I don't know.
Well, tell me about that, because we're talking a lot this morning about Trump. He got the nomination in New Hampshire last night. He looks set to get the Republican nomination. I mean, the Republicans want to ban abortion nationwide in the States. Does that have an impact on the way we view things over here in the UK?
I mean, maybe it shows us that those hard-fought freedoms are never completely secure. We should always be on our guard that these things can be watered down. But, I mean, you said, what would the arguments of the other side be? No one's arguing against their right to freedom of thought, expression, belief, religion, whatever. Just why does it have to be, at that point, on the pavement, outside the clinic gates? Can't they have their protest there?
Yeah. I suppose the issue of abortion, and I know there will be people who will email in and the sanctity of life always comes into this debate, but just again, coming back to my documentary, it was my observation that abortion services, abortion clinics are so poor in the United Kingdom that many women, particularly in Scotland, were not able to access abortion clinics, were travelling down to London, which meant very often they were quite late into their pregnancy, within the legal limit still, but we're talking about 20, 22 weeks, with a bump. And I can see where, for those people with religious beliefs about the sanctity of life, there becomes a blurring of the lines. And I do think the issue of abortion does always need to be treated very, very carefully, and therefore this public consultation is worthwhile in that sense.
Well, look, no, it's a very sensitive moment for a woman. She won't be doing this lightly. And then to compound that with these people in their face, they might not see themselves as obstructing, but... Do you know what I mean? The fact of them being there, as you said, Eamonn, it's a bit creepy. Isabel, you know this as a woman. Sometimes you'll shudder and cross the pavement because someone's, off-putting and creepy. So just their very presence at that moment, they can have their protests, but just move them on.
Their presence does.
Yeah, I think...
But is there a
what
point
happens next?
So, look, I mean, I think... I'm actually hopeful that James Cleverly, he has agreed to meet, so that's good. I sort of stood up in the House of Commons and said, this thing is coming... I think, reading between the lines, his letter says he was passed on guidance by a predecessor. He wanted to get it off his desk because it had been a long time coming. But he's happy to meet and hear the arguments. You said he's going around saying he wants to protect women's rights. You know, after Sarah Everard, we all said that women and girls should be protected. This is something that was passed into law. If it doesn't, there's likely to be judicial challenges.
Just a final point, because it was in the headlines yesterday that medics are being advised not to report illegal abortions in this country. Do you agree with that principle?
Look, I mean, I think this is a different issue. I'm not even talking about the number of weeks or any of that stuff, but every Royal College, obstetricians and gynecologists, the GPs, the BMA, the nurses, they all think this is a really good piece of legislation. They have it in France, they have it in Canada, they have it in Australia. Yeah. Some American states, we should just get on and do this. I don't know why this extra stage has happened.
Well, you do know why. It's an election year, isn't it? Are there votes in it or votes against it?
77% of the public want this law. The reason why MPs voted for it is it sort of eats up police time. Police should be actually going after criminals, not manning abortion clinic gates. And we need a consistent law for all, because at the moment, if you live in Ealing, you have it. If you live most other places, there's only a tiny number. You've got a local version. They shouldn't have to renew it every 3 years. Let's be consistent. Rule of law means you get it wherever you live.
It's a contentious subject. Rupert Huck, thank you for talking to us this morning.
Great to see you on GB News. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Banning disposable vapes would protect children, but adults may need to be persuaded to switch to other e-cigarettes to prevent them going back to smoking.
Well, a study funded by Cancer Research UK found that a ban on disposable vapes currently being considered by the government would affect an estimated 2.6 million adults in England, Wales and Scotland.
Joining us now, John Dunn. John's the Director General of UK Vaping Industry Association, who thinks you shouldn't ban disposable vapes. And then there's Ewan Fisher, who nearly died from vaping and thinks it's about time to ban them. Ewan, I think that's the bit that people don't hear about vaping and death. What nearly happened to you and how?
Good morning. I hope you're all okay. So when I was 16 years old, I took a turn for the worst and nearly lost my life. Luckily, I'm still here to tell what happened to me. But I spent many months in hospital on 2 different life support machines and on an ECMO machine in Glenfield Hospital in Leicester, in which they luckily saved my life. Yeah, it was such a hard time for me
But how
and everyone around me.
I don't understand how a vape nearly kills you. Just explain that to me. What happened?
So they took my liquids off me and the vapes that I was using at the time, and they sent them off for studies, and it took multiple years. And then they came back and said it was something that was in the vape oils that had like reactions with my body and whatnot. But who's to say that wouldn't happen to anybody else from the stuff that was put in the vape liquid?
Well, how do you answer all of this then, John Dunn? Not only have we got the, case study of Ewan Fisher, we've also got the Chief Medical Officer, Professor Chris Whitty, saying that really the risks of vaping on children are a big unknown. And are we prepared as a society to do that to our kids?
Well, first of all, Ewan and I are very good friends at this stage. Ewan's case is very rare. It's a case where Ewan is allergic to something in the e-liquid. These cases you're looking at probably a handful around the world. And we've got 4.2 million people vaping in the UK with very little incidence of ill effects from vaping. In fact, there's been about 420 adverse effects reported to MHRA. But what we've got to understand with Ewan's situation is, if you do have adverse effects to it, please consult your doctor. These products are not 100% safe. Nobody is saying that they are. But when you compare to smoking, they're at least 95% less harmful. And smoking kills 220 people every day in the UK. And so far, vaping legitimate nicotine vapes has not killed anybody.
OK, Ewan, so you're an unusual anomaly, and perhaps it's preferable if people are going to use one sort of smoking contraption to vape as opposed to using cigarettes.
Yeah, but if you think about it, really, smoking used to get pushed to people as something positive, and now look at all the problems that people are having from that. So how is anybody to say that somewhere down the line and in the future that vaping isn't going to be the exact same problem as what cigarettes are nowadays?
OK, well, we'll leave it there. John Dunn, Ewan Fisher, thank you both very much indeed.
We'll take a break there. Claire Purcell, Nigel Nelson, husband and wife team, are discussing the big stories of the day from the papers. Plus, Nadine Dorries, we'll be talking to her for her reaction to calls for the Prime Minister to resign after this.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go through what's making the news this morning is the former Conservative advisor, Claire Pearsall, and the GB News senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Good morning to you both. Nigel, you want to start with the story which I have to say grabbed my attention first thing this morning. Right slap bang on the front of the Telegraph, their leader today, is this army chief saying that the public face being called up if the UK goes to war. I mean, can we face war on the cheap?
Well, this is the question. I mean, it's all down to the fact that we're reducing the size of the army down to 72,000 troops, that we can't get enough sailors onto our aircraft carriers to send them around the place. And this is the warning from the Chief of the General Staff, General Sir Patrick Sanders, where he says we're kind of facing a 1937 moment, that war with Russia is a distinct possibility. It's all rather terrifying stuff, this. But because of the size of our armed forces, it means that ordinary people will have to be called up. I think I'm probably a bit past call-up age now, so I can...
You never know. You never know.
I'll do the dad's army at home. But, I mean, one question will be, will people actually obey the call?
Well, that's fascinating, isn't it? The attitude to duty has shifted so much since the 1930s and all of that sort of thing. People, would they risk their lives, you know, for king and country? I hope so. Otherwise, we're all doomed, aren't we? But
we are, but I do think that we really need to pay attention. If you've got one of the chief strategists of the country saying we may need to bring back basically conscription, I think we need to heed that, because he's not going to say it lightly. Politicians are not going to want to hear it. And I think it's incredibly important that sometimes they hear these things.
It's not an election winner, though, is it? Vote for us and we'll conscript your sons and now daughters for World War III.
But then again, this is about the good of the country.
No, I know. But
So
yeah,
I
when
think
would
we
that
all
have
need
anything
to-
to do with an election?
No, it doesn't. You know, hence why I'm not a politician.
But I think also it raises, Nigel, does it not, what on earth the government, central UK government, have been doing with the defence budget, and why forces are so depleted. And basically, I suppose, young people today, naturally enough, don't want to face a life of servitude and being bossed about and told what to do, as would be the case in the armed forces.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. I mean, even when we had national service, it wasn't hugely popular at the time. And I just can't see young people turning around and saying, hang on, do I really want to go to war? And what if they turn around and say no? Does that mean that we don't join in some kind of future war? I think it obviously depends on what the threat is. I mean, what the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps would say is, we've got lots of technology, we don't need quite so many people to work it, we can find fight wars that way. But certainly, when you get somebody like Patrick Sanders, who actually understands the manpower you need, yes.
And what would this sort of percentage of GDP in defence be under a Labour government? Traditionally, this is a Tory strong point, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, I think that we're back to sort of Tony Blair days, where they're borrowing policies, but both sides are borrowing policies from each other. The idea at the moment is to do defence spending of 2.5%. There have been calls to actually make it 3%. Yeah. I think we'll probably stick to the 2.5 under Labour.
OK.
OK. And continuing, I suppose, with that theme, Prince Edward, Claire, is talking about politics, and he's talking about, I suppose, the role men have in current life and things like conscripting for the army.
Well, that's right. This is a really interesting speech given by Prince Edward in South Africa, where he's off on a visit, and breaking it down by saying that men really aren't doing a great job. Look at all the conflicts that are going on, and we need to look at the role of women. And I thought this is quite fascinating. His wife is very heavily into gender equality. She is a great spokesperson for women's rights. And he seems to now be echoing that and pushing it forward. And I do think there is a point. And I come across as a massive feminist, but I dislike the fact that women are so discounted in these kind of conversations, because as we've seen during the pandemic, there were men in the main 4 roles of what they call the quad of COVID decisions within the government, and no women. So what happened is childcare was not thought out, anything to do with moving children between households if there were divorced families, but also those businesses that predominantly employed women and were set up by women in the beauty industry, and things like that were never, ever considered. So I think that he's right to raise this. It's quite interesting doing it in South Africa, where human rights is always a big subject, and to look at it from a gender perspective is something very different for them. But I think fair play to him for bringing this to the
Yeah, and you look at the Women Wage Peace Movement, which is a union between Israeli and Palestinian women who've come together and said, enough is enough, please stop the bloodshed of our children. It is often women that voice that opinion.
Let's get the view of a very prominent woman, and you two with your political heads on can just listen as we talk now to Nadine Dorries, former Culture Secretary, as we return to our top story this morning. Nadine, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah, this is to do with Sir Simon Clarke, who was Mr Sunak's number 2 at the Treasury. And basically he's saying, Conservative Party, you better think seriously about ditching Rishi Sunak, or else you're in big trouble come any election. What do you think?
So I couldn't agree with him more. Simon Clarke, I know there's a lot of rhetoric flying around this morning, but Simon Clarke is one of the most decent and principled men in politics today. And he is somebody who would always put party before self. Now, I've heard that there are people saying, he has leadership ambitions. Simon Clarke couldn't be further from somebody who has leadership ambitions. So I just want to put that out there and put that straight. Simon Clarke has always fought a very difficult red wall seat. He's always been aware that his first priority was making sure he held that seat for the Conservative Party. And I think he will struggle to find anybody in the party who would not say what a principled man he is. So just that side. The other point I'd like to make is that the people who are criticising him this morning, they're not criticising Rishi Sunak. They're not backing Rishi Sunak, by the way. They feel exactly the same. But each one of them, and the 3 main people, Priti Patel, David Davis and Liam Fox, one of those 3 people have told me themselves that their preferred option is that the party does lose at the next election, because that sometimes has to happen. And each one of them believe that they should be the person who will be the saviour, who resurrects the party and leads the party moving on. Now, I like all 3 of those people, and they are all good people, but all of them do have very strong and always have had leadership ambitions. In fact, all 3 of them have at some stage in their political career run for leadership of the party. Simon Clarke hasn't, he never would, and people need to listen to what he says.
Okay.
And the point, actually, he's correct.
Okay.
If we continue as we are now, we are polling 20% of the vote. I think there was one poll last night that showed we would return fewer MPs than the Liberal Democrats. I think we're probably looking at a Canadian-style wipeout under Stephen Harper, I think it was, when the Conservative Party returned 3 MPs. That's what we're looking at if we don't do something now. And the Conservative Party wrote its suicide note the day it removed Boris Johnson. And I'm afraid this is the longest death in political history. That is what's taking place right now.
Yeah, but Nadine, people will be saying you've got to get over it. You know, we can't have another Prime Minister for 5 minutes before a general election. All that will happen is you'll get another one in, another unelected Prime Minister. It will totally infuriate huge swathes of the British public, and you'll be handing the keys to Sir Keir Starmer. Loads of Tories getting in touch this morning saying exactly that. Jeremy in Stafford, if the Tories dispose of Rishi Sunak now, the pressure to hold an immediate general election would make it inevitable. Who on earth would want to be Prime Minister for 5 minutes? And Pixie says, is the Conservative Party mad? That's why they're in the state they are. They got rid of Boris against the voters' will. Why do they think a new PM would then suddenly win an election?
I couldn't agree with all of them more. It's just replacing the leader is not going to... So there are a number of points in Simon's letter and Simon's article, actually, in the Telegraph yesterday. And so the first one I addressed with you this morning was, is he right in saying that we are walking into an absolute massacre? Yes, we are. The second point, should we change leader at this point? What has the party got? So the party is looking at total wipeout. And I believe that polling is coming out soon, which shows the situation to be even worse than it was last Sunday night when polling came out.
How do you know about that? I'm just interested how you know about the polling that's about to come out. And I ask you that because there are lots of questions about who was behind the polling last week. Was it Lord Frost or indeed Sir Simon Clarke? So do you have some intel on all of this?
I've heard the same as you. I've also heard Michael Ashcroft's name. I've heard, I'm not Simon, I've heard Lord Frost, Simon Ashcroft, Lord Crudders. I don't know. I wish I did. I really wish I did. I don't know. So I am so sorry, but I don't know. But I do hear things like you do.
Okay.
So
what you do know that Sir Keir Starmer is beatable. He is a weak link for the Labour Party. So which only goes to sort of highlight how bad Rishi Sunak must be in the eyes of the public. I mean, it's not as if... I mean, I think I would fancy taking on Keir Starmer, to be quite truthful.
So there is no love for Keir Starmer, I can promise you, out on the doorstep. But what you're seeing happening at the moment with the hugely volatile situation politics is in, is that, you know, and I've talked about this, I'm going to mention it in my book, the part which I wrote, which worked just before Christmas, is that the people, when the public come out and vote for somebody in the numbers that they voted for Boris Johnson, when people who have only ever voted Labour their entire lives change and vote Conservative, that's a big deal. That takes a lot for someone to do, a lifelong Labour supporter or Conservative supporter, the other way around, to vote for the other party. And the fact is they didn't. We got an 80-seat majority. We've got a bigger percentage of the vote share in 2019 than Tony Blair did in 97, because people came out and voted for Boris Johnson.
Well, a lot of people came out and voted against Jeremy Corbyn as well, people would say to that. And so Simon Clarke saying this morning, we need a leader championing core Conservative values. Well, we're hearing there's going to be tax cuts coming up in the March the 6th budget, lots of extra headroom there. We've had the toughest immigration bill ever under the Conservatives trying to sort out this problem of illegal crossings. You know, what more do you want from the Prime Minister? Much more core Conservative can you get?
Our levels of taxation are at their highest in 40 years.
Yeah, but we also have an army that can't defend us if we go into World War III because of the not enough funding going into that. How much more, do you want us to spend?
So, without going into a kind of lesson on the basics of economics, the less people are taxed, the more people have money they have in their pockets, the more they will spend, the more goes back to the Treasury and revenue, the more we have to spend on issues like defence. That is the problem at the moment. It's not, I served in Cabinet the entire time Rishi Sunak was Chancellor. I watched him block the Rwanda policy for 3 whole years, block it at every turn, until the day he became Prime Minister. I watched him cancel social care. I watched him argue for higher taxes over and over again. I watched those cabinet ministers who at the cabinet table made the case for lower taxation, increase revenues to the Treasury via lower taxation, and giving people more money in their pockets, lose their jobs as soon as Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. I'm afraid politics is not always an honourable game. And, you know, if you were to ask me honestly, what do I think my opinion is of Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, I don't think he's a politician. I don't think he gets it. I don't think he understands what motivates people. And I don't think he understands the basic principles of what it is that makes people go out and vote for a particular party and what it is they want for themselves. And what they want for themselves is more responsibility to decide themselves how they spend their money. They want the taxman to be diving into their pockets less. They want to do up their homes. They want to go on holidays. They want to do their gardens. All of that involves spending, and all of that involves money that comes back to the Treasury.
Okay.
And I'm afraid we're one of the highest tax nations in, I'm not going to quote a figure because I'll probably be wrong, but we're paying higher taxes now than we have for 2 generations.
Yeah. Nadine, I've got 2 political gurus around this table in the form of Nigel Nelson and Claire Purcell. Guys, I'm just looking at you and looking at Nadine, and is there anything pops to mind or anything you want to particularly ask or say to or challenge her on?
Well, the only question there is that whether Nadine feels that you actually could bring Boris back. It seems to be her idea. I mean, the only way it can happen is after the election, but he'd need a seat or whatever. I think not. In the same way, the idea that you might get rid of another Prime Minister, especially just before the election, I mean, that's for the birds. It would just be a complete and utter disaster.
Boris back, Nadine?
I'm not sure he wants to come back. Just let me tell you a little bit of news. I've heard that Henley and Tame, Boris's local seat where he was previously the MP, they've just conducted their selection of their candidate, and they did it in 6 days, just in case Boris Johnson wanted to go back to that seat. And because people in that constituency wanted Boris, they turned it around in 6 days. And so, that was my intelligence on Monday. Whether it happened last night or not, I'm not sure. But I'm not even sure Boris, you know, the party is almost unleadable. And the point that I was making earlier, you know, he got a bigger vote share of the percentage of the vote share than Tony Blair did in '97. And to your point that people were voting against Jeremy Corbyn, that's not what I hear, and that's not what I'm hearing from MP after MP who's out on the doorstep, who tell me that people are saying to them, I voted for Boris. They're not saying I voted against Jeremy Corbyn. They're saying I voted for Boris Johnson. And I'm afraid when you take people's votes and you trash them, when MPs decide that they know better than the general public, you're going to suffer, and that is what's happening to us now.
Claire?
Yeah, it's just a really quick question. If we are going to dispatch yet another Prime Minister and install another one very quickly, I would ask if, Nadine, would you support not going to the membership of the Conservative Party and just having almost a coronation? Is that something you would support?
That's a really good point, Claire. And actually, I would never, ever support not going to the membership, because I think what's happened with Boris Johnson was totally undemocratic. I think we have a democratic deficit in the party at the moment and at the heart of government. But I think what will happen is this. Just as when Ian Duncan Smith was removed, MPs were persuaded that it would be wrong to go through a leadership election. It was 2003. They had no idea when an election would be coming. They were persuaded not to have a leadership election. And I think we were all blindsided by David Cameron arriving as Foreign Secretary. Nothing happens by accident, either at the top of the Conservative Party or in government. Nothing happens by accident. There was a reason why David Cameron was brought back at the point he was. There's a reason why you have very prime ministerial footage where you are broadcasting it and other channels are broadcasting it today. And I would not be surprised at all if what you see is some kind of arrangement made in the near future where it's possible for David Cameron to go into the Commons from the Lords, possibly to the bar. And I think you will find that an elegant solution, if Rishi is removed by a vote of no confidence, will be for MPs to be persuaded to put David Cameron in place for an election, because he's fought them before and nearly won one and did win one, that he's been there before, he's an old hand, he knows what he's doing. Let David Cameron take over until an election, and then the party can put its leader in place, exactly as it happened with Ian Duncan-Smith and Michael Howard.
Interesting. Nadine, we could talk for a lot longer, but the clock has beaten us. Thank you for your time and contributions this morning. That gives us more to talk about in the studio. Nadine Dorries, former Culture Secretary, Cabinet Member. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you. Well...
Yeah, what do you make of that? I mean, it was interesting, wasn't it? She's sort of giving me a lesson in economics and how, you know, the economy gets better when people have more money in their pocket. But forgive me, was that not the point I was trying to make, that the Chancellor is expected to make significant tax cuts in March, and indeed in the autumn statement in November, it was the biggest cut to business tax in a generation.
Yeah, but they've put it up the biggest rises in a generation as well.
Yes, they have, but didn't we learn from Liz Truss's small premiership that you cannot do these things hard and fast without looking at the consequences of it? So you do have to do it incrementally. I don't think you can rush into it. And it's interesting that you were getting a lesson in economics. I mean, we all know that, but you can't crash the economy either.
You know, anybody, and people stop talking about this, anybody who hasn't got the message, this country is broke. Look at your local councils, look at central government, look at the health service,
cut taxes,
look at the
army.
court services, the army, everything. We haven't got whatever to... Yeah, I can't give you that phrase, but we haven't got any utensils to pee in or anything. It's no, it is absolutely ridiculous, and they're only deluding you by telling you they're not. This business of giving you a penny back here and doing this and doing that. What difference does it make? You get 50 extra quid a year.
But they can't afford to do any more.
Yeah,
and that's
we
the
are
problem.
trillions. I mean, you look at the debt yesterday, in absolute trillions. So we need to cut something drastically, say that's not a responsibility anymore, or tell the truth, heaven forbid. There we go. Thank you very much, Claire.
Yeah, thank you. Really enjoyed it. Nigel Nelson. But we're now going to get a forecast with Alex Deakin. All eyes on the havoc that's been wreaked by the latest storm. Good morning, Alex.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Still very windy out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn is clearing away today. Bright and blustery for most. As I say, there are still warnings in place, particularly gusty over northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland through the morning time. Still a potential for further disruption. And then the winds will steadily ease a bit this afternoon, but it stays blustery. We'll see cloud and patchy rain for South Wales, southwest England. Plenty of showers coming into western Scotland, but many central and eastern areas will be dry and bright with some sunny spells. Feels a bit fresher than yesterday. Temperatures, though, still 9 to 11 Celsius, a touch above average for this time of the year. Through this evening, we'll continue to see showers coming into Scotland. So the winds will continue to ease. In the south, we are looking at thickening cloud and some outbreaks of rain trickling more widely over southern England and South Wales. And some of that rain will head towards Northern Ireland by dawn. Chilly one across Scotland, a hint of blue there, so some pockets of frost are possible. Most towns and cities start Thursday at 4 or 5 Celsius. Starting dull and damp across the Midlands, North Wales and Northern Ireland. Tomorrow that rain will spread steadily into parts of Scotland, northeast England. Also turns a little drier further south, but staying pretty grey, I suspect, and cloudy. And the winds will start to pick up once more. Nothing as lively as today, but the breeze will pick up. And tomorrow will be a milder day, double digits across the board.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's about to turn 9 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 24th of January. You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Thank you for your company and leading our news this morning. Pressure on the Prime Minister. We've just been talking about this as he faces calls to resign following a scathing attack from former Cabinet Minister Simon Clarke and just a few minutes ago in the programme, former Cabinet member Nadine Dorries.
Donald Trump has sailed to victory in New Hampshire overnight, beating rival Nikki Haley. So is it a Trump v Biden rematch inevitable in the autumn?
Storm Jocelyn, the remnants, the aftermath today. It'll cause chaos with your commute after another night of strong winds and heavy rains. Alex Deacon will have the forecast.
Very windy again out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn will clear away through the day today and the winds will slowly be easing. Bright and blustery with sunshine and a few showers. A full forecast coming up later.
Thanks very much indeed, and thanks for your views this morning. We had a debate on vaping as well, and Richard says, I don't think vape should be banned. It helped me give up smoking, he says. Ali says, Australia from the beginning of the year made vapes only available with a prescription, as too many children as young as 12 years of age we're using them. Scott in Antrim. I stopped smoking 10 years ago, vaped for 8 years before finally quitting altogether 2 years ago. Without the availability of vapes, I'd probably still be smoking cigarettes.
We've also been talking about broke councils this morning. Lee in Cornwall's got in touch. He says, my emails have been ignored by GB News for over a week, so we apologise for that, and we're setting that right here, right now. Lee says, councils need to stop hiring so many managers who pay upwards of 50k a year. They also need to stop ripping people off with council tax just to pay them. And this one from Brian, let's cut final salary, gold-plated pensions on council workers. I'm sure a lot of you would agree with that. This one, keep them coming in.
GB Views at gbnews.com. Okay, let's return to this story about Sir Simon Clarke. He's called for Rishi Sunak to be replaced, or else he warns the Conservative Party will face a massacre.
Well, in a piece for The Telegraph this morning, the former Cabinet Secretary who served under Liz Truss warned that the current Prime Minister is leading the party to extinction.
Let's go to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. You're gauging reaction as it's coming in, as people are waking up to this story today. Olivia, how are you seeing it?
Well, last night there was all sorts of whisperings in Westminster. There was talk that cabinet ministers were going to be resigning too, and that this could be the beginning of the end of Rishi Sunak. This morning, that all seems to have died down a bit. In fact, it feels like a little bit of an anticlimax. Sir Simon Clarke is a relatively big-hitting figure in the Conservative Party. He was a close ally of Liz Truss's, and he was Chief Secretary to the Treasury under Rishi Sunak as Chancellor. So he was Rishi Sunak's number 2, essentially. That means it is a bit of a blow for the Prime Minister. He doesn't want his own backbenchers, particularly someone pretty influential like Simon Clarke, calling for his resignation. But no one has really rode in behind Clarke. There hasn't been this ministerial resignation that some were expecting, and actually some unlikely people have weighed in behind the Prime Minister. We've had Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, no friend of Rishi Sunak's, saying that Simon Clarke was wrong to call for his resignation, and Liz Truss herself even has said that she isn't behind her close friend Simon Clarke's comments. So it doesn't feel like a rebellion is brewing, and sources I've spoken to have suggested that the rebels just don't have enough numbers for a vote of no confidence. But of course, the Prime Minister is at a very low ebb at the moment. A poll last week for The Telegraph showed a pretty catastrophic general election prediction for the Tories, down to 169 seats, only a few more than they had under John Major in 1997. And anything at all which undermines Rishi Sunak's position at the moment is something that the government really can't afford.
Dorries had to say, the former Culture Secretary, to us a few minutes ago, Olivia.
I'm afraid politics is not always an honourable game. And, if you were to ask me honestly, what do I think my opinion is of Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, I don't think he's a politician. I don't think he gets it. I don't think he understands what motivates people. And I don't think he understands the basic principles of what it is that makes people go out and vote for a particular party and what it is they want for themselves. And what they want for themselves is more responsibility to decide themselves how they spend their money. They want the taxman to be diving into their pockets less. They want to do up their homes. They want to go on holidays. They want to do their gardens. All of that involves spending, and all of that involves money that comes back to the Treasury.
See, what I like about Nadine Dorries, Olivia, is that she talks plain English. She says it as it is, and she talks about attainable aspirations. People want to do up their homes, for instance. Yes, people are more interested in their curtains and their fabrics and what type of wallpaper they're going to get than some sort of abstract foreign policy on this. Her accusation is that Sunak doesn't understand how ordinary people think. What would you say to that?
I mean, that's an accusation that has often been levelled at Rishi Sunak, a part of the downside of being a billionaire. But I think she does hit a note with plenty of Conservative MPs and probably quite a few people in the country too. Rishi Sunak talks a lot about the economy as an abstract and doesn't talk that much about the ordinary sort of aspirations of people living in the UK. So that probably does resonate. And I'm sure plenty of Conservative MPs agree that Rishi Sunak might not be a natural politician. But at the moment, the point is they're far too worried about another leadership election to actually do anything about it.
OK, Olivia, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. We say goodbye to Olivia because Lucy Powell for Labour is standing by for us. She is the shadow leader of the Commons. Good morning to you. Should we start by talking about what is our top story this morning? Lots of question marks about who would be the best Conservative leader to try and stop you guys getting the keys to number 10, which seems to be inevitable at the moment. Do you have a preference? Who's going to be who are you going to be licking your lips over the most?
Well, frankly, I'm sick to the whole death of it, really. Who cares, quite honestly? We've just got another day of the sort of Westminster soap opera of Conservative politicians taking lumps out of each other, seemingly more interested in their own careers than they are interested in changing the lives of your viewers and my constituents and those that we represent. I feel a bit like Brenda, who famously said, "Oh no, not another one." Can we have a government that gets on with the job it's there to do, which is to bring about change, deal with the problems that this country's facing, help people with the cost of living and paying bills, help people get an appointment at the GP or a hip replacement operation as they need it, and help deal with things like crime on our streets and knife crime, as Labour's talking about today? I think that's what people are more interested in, and frankly, this ongoing soap opera and circle of infighting just really needs to come to an end. And if a general election is the best way to do that, then bring it on.
Now, one of those things you touched upon there, knife crime. Yesterday, various interviews concerning those Nottingham knife crime murders, and the father and the brother, particularly the brother of Grace O'Malley Kumar, literally brought tears to my eyes, talking about how his life was over, his life was ruined because of the loss of his sister. What did you think about that verdict handed out, manslaughter?
Well, it didn't feel like the right verdict to me, and I think, as you say, I mean, these we all feel like there, but for the grace go I, because I've got teenagers, we've all got young people, brothers, sisters, relatives who we would worry about, and who can suddenly find themselves involved in an incident that then becomes a serious fatality, because we do have an epidemic of knife crime in this country, and people walking around, far too many people walking around in possession of knives. And that's why Keir Starmer and our shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper are setting out today a really comprehensive plan to tackle this issue, not just in terms of the buying and selling of knives and the outlawing of knives, but dealing with prevention, getting back into youth services and youth provision, and educating our young people about the dangers and trying to prevent them getting involved in this activity in the first place.
One of the big factors deemed to be prevention is stop and search. And traditionally, Labour have not been a fan of stop and search. How are you going to tackle that?
Well, look, it's not that we're not a fan of stop and search. I think that's a wrong characterisation. Stop and search is an important tool that the police need to have in order to be able to, as it says on the tin, stop and search people where they suspect they are carrying a knife or they're involved in some criminal activity. I think what we've seen over the years, and I think this has got better recently, but what we've seen over the years is an unfair operational of that, really. And so we've seen some communities unfairly targeted with stop and search, and that's well evidenced. But stop and search itself is an important tool for the police, but this is only one very small aspect, really, of tackling knife crime. We do have to stop the buying and selling of knives, and the government have brought in some laws over recent years to do that, but there are far too many loopholes in those laws, and we're not dealing with the online sales of illegal knife crime in a way that we should, a comprehensive way that we should. And we have seen a real stripping away of youth services and activities for young people to engage in, which we think will do more to help prevent young people getting involved in the first place.
Yeah, although if we look at this particular case in Nottingham, this wasn't about gang crime or young people getting wrapped up in, you know, a lack of sort of social youth groups or whatever else it might be. It was a lack of mental health provision, and you know there were multiple opportunities that were missed, a litany of them, because he wasn't being picked up. So what does Labour suggest when it comes to strengthening that? Because we know what a huge increase in the demand on mental health services we've seen, not least in the last decade. It's a really difficult area, especially when it comes to knives.
Well, absolutely, and you're right, and yeah, it was remiss of me to not mention that, because that is a key part of the strategy that Keir and Yvette are setting out today. You know, that mental health support is vital in that as well for our young people, and we've got a fully costed plan with the getting rid of VAT on private schools to get more mental health support in our schools, more mental health support for our young people, because we see months and waiting times for referrals for young people, but also for adults as well. As you're absolutely right, you know, mental health has been the sort of Cinderella really of our health service provision, and adults can wait years, not just weeks or months, but years for treatment and referral. And this is the best kind of prevention that we can get into our health service, which, as you say, then has a direct impact on our criminal justice system and crime and prevention of crime in this country as well. And that's why we do have plans across these areas, and they are setting out this very wide-ranging plan today.
Okay.
I'm just going to ask you about private schools, because I can't let you go without asking about this. It's a really big issue for our audience. They get in touch with us very strongly whenever you talk about school fees and this VAT scrapping there. I mean, there's a big campaign now growing, which we've been covering here on the channel. They're saying that this is class politics, and that's a different era. We don't live in that era anymore, and actually what you're going to do will really hurt the less well-off. Those people are just about managing, those people who are making sacrifices on those things that those aspirational things, holidays, whatever it might be, so that their kids can go to private school. You've got to listen to that, haven't you? You're really just bashing those who are trying their best for their kids.
Well, we're not bashing those. Look, I understand those aspirations of people who want the very best education for their children. I want the very best education, not just for my children, but for every child as well. And our state education system, which educates over 90% of young people in this country, needs more resources, and it needs things like these mental health hubs in schools. It needs more resources to tackle some of these issues that we are putting on our schools today. And look, we pay VAT. I mean, you were talking earlier about ordinary people's aspirations. We pay VAT if we're getting an extension on our home, if we're getting work done on our home, if we get a painter and decorator in. We're paying 20% VAT for that service. We pay VAT on most things that we pay for in life, and it's kind of an anomaly, really, that private school fees are not charged VAT. And we just think that's a really important thing to iron out in order that we can get this much needed resource into the schools that educate the vast majority of people in this country. And we have fantastic state education in this country, and I think most people send their schools to them, and we want to support them in doing that.
Lucy, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Lucy Powell is the shadow leader of the House of Commons. Presenting Britain's newsroom from 9:30. Andrew and Bev. Without misrepresenting Lucy Powell in any way, Andrew and Bev, we were talking about stop and search and stop and search powers, and she came out with this political answer, which was, stop and search is a useful tool. I put it to you, it's a useful tool as long as they don't have to use it. They're not going to implement stop and search or advocate it in any strong way, are they?
It's because it's too politically incorrect, and they worry it targets the wrong people, and it's an invaluable to stop knife crime. And we saw this terrible thing that happened with the guy who I'm glad that she admitted it's bizarre that his sentence is only manslaughter when it was a brutal slaying of 3 young people with a knife.
Yeah, stop and search might feel like a bad idea until you have teenagers walking the streets of London like I do. And then you want every single kid, and you don't mind if it's your kids.
Searched.
You don't mind if it's your kids who are searched because it's rife amongst children carrying knives.
There was a chief constable in Liverpool some years ago, I remember interviewing, who had those airport-style screens outside schools on occasions. And you'd be amazed, that was 15 years ago, how many times there was a blade in one of the kids' bags.
But we're going to be discussing, talking about teenagers, of whether they would actually go to war for their country.
This is General Sir Patrick Sanders, the head of the army. He's making a speech during our time saying we might have to do just that in 20 years' time.
But, you know, you will get young people who will stand up and see it as their duty. They've been taught that way in school or family values or whatever it is. And then you get people who will run a mile. Very contentious.
You've got a generation of teenage boys who have a meltdown if they don't know the Wi-Fi code. The idea that they would be prepared to risk their life for their country, and they've had no sense of national pride growing up. You're not allowed to put a flag on your taxi, we saw this week. You expect them now to suddenly go, oh yeah, I'm going to sacrifice my life for a war I don't believe in. Come on, never going to happen.
I think if the general was able to say if Britain was under the threat of invasion, these kids might be more willing. But the idea, well, maybe not.
It'll be under the bed.
But the idea is we're going to go to war with Russia in 20 years' time. We're not going to get many conscripts.
The idea of Nazi Germany invading the United Kingdom would bring anyone to arms, I would think. You would think there's a noble, just cause fighting for friends and family and whatever. But the idea of getting involved in some country somewhere in a desert in the world.
And also the warfare will be so different with fake news. How do you get the young to believe what's going on, what's true and what's not?
We're also talking to Nigel Farage to tell us what he thinks about Trump's storming victory in New Hampshire, Liberal bastion. Really
All right, we look forward to it. Thanks both.
Thank you. We're going to be talking Oscars after this break.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Oscars came out yesterday. A few controversial nominations and whatever way it goes. Anyway, earlier we spoke to showbiz reporter Stephanie Tetchy.
Hey, let's talk about the Oscars, guys, because the nominations did come out yesterday. As predicted, Eamonn and Isabel, Oppenheimer got 13 awards. Poor Things, which is like the feminist reimagining of Frankenstein.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yes, with Emma Stone, 11 nominations. 11 nominations, which was all predictable because it's following the Golden Globes and last week's BAFTA nominations.
So you watched that?
Yes, I have. I loved it. I think it's been a great year for movies, Eamonn, actually. Despite of the strikes, there were some good films that were coming through with strong narratives. But the big headlines this morning is Barbie being snubbed for Best Actress for Margot Robbie and Best Director of Greta Gerwig.
This is, look, I don't want to be... There's a delicious irony, isn't there, that a film that is about defeating the patriarchy has failed to get any nominations apart from the bloke.
Ryan Gosling, who overnight has had to come out with a statement and said that there is no Barbie without Margot Robbie and there's no Barbie without Greta Gerwig. And it just fits in with the feminist time of the film. Last year, for the past couple of years, people haven't been going to the cinemas. Barbie Managed was the highest grossing film of 2023.
How desperate people were.
No, because it shows what we wanted to watch in the cinemas. But, you know, the reason why there's this disconnect, because there's always a difference of taste between the Academy members and what cinema people like to watch.
That's fair enough. I don't think just because something's been popular and been grossing really highly means it's necessarily worth the critics' choice. You know, what you're looking for in an Oscar film is something that will stand the test of time.
Definitely.
That is, you know, I'm not sure that is Barbie. I haven't seen it, caveat, but I just get that impression.
Well, that's it, Isabel. Industry is quite tough and they're more critical when it comes to awards and what they think is worth nominating, where cinema viewers were much more relaxed. We want a bit of entertainment, we want comedy, we want the Gerard Butlers like Eamonn's after, so that's why there's this whole disconnect. But there's been other snubs as well. Saltburn, which has been highly critically acclaimed, didn't get any nominations, and last week it was nominated for Outstanding British Film at the BAFTAs. So there's always this disconnect when it comes to what's going to be popular on the night. Leonardo DiCaprio, again, he's been snubbed, but he's always had a hard relationship with Oscars. It took him until 2016 to receive his first Oscar, and he's had such an amazing career.
Love a Gerard Butler film, have to say. Love an Andrew and Bev programme. That's coming up next.
Yes, and we'll be back next week. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Still very windy out there this morning. Storm Jocelyn is clearing away today. Bright and blustery for most. As I say, there are still warnings in place, particularly gusty over northeast England and eastern parts of Scotland through the morning time. Still a potential for further disruption. And then the winds will steadily ease a bit this afternoon, but it stays blustery. We'll see cloud and patchy rain for South Wales, southwest England. Plenty of showers coming into western Scotland, but many central and eastern areas will be dry and bright with some sunny spells. Feels a bit fresher than yesterday. Temperatures, though, still 9 to 11 Celsius, a touch above average for this time of the year. Through this evening, we'll continue to see showers coming into Scotland. The winds will continue to ease. In the south, we are looking at thickening cloud and some outbreaks of rain trickling more widely over southern England and South Wales.
and some of that rain will head towards Northern Ireland by dawn. Chilly one across Scotland, a hint of blue there, so some pockets of frost are possible. Most towns and cities start Thursday at 4 or 5 Celsius. Starting dull and damp across the Midlands, North Wales and Northern Ireland. Tomorrow that rain will spread steadily into parts of Scotland, North East England also. Turns a little drier further south, but staying pretty grey, I suspect, and cloudy. And the winds will start to pick up once more. Nothing as lively as today, but the breeze will pick up. And tomorrow will be a milder day, double digits across the board.
Well, good morning. We're discussing what we're going to talk to you about. A lot in the show today.
The head of the army is making a major speech. He's saying in a few years' time we may have to sign up to fight for king and country. Do you do that?
Good luck.
Do you do that?
Getting this generation.
Fortunately, I'm too old. We're also talking to Nigel Farage about Trump storming to victory in New Hampshire.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
9:30 on Wednesday, the 23rd of January. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning. Are you ready for